You're all very welcome to TUS's first ever workplace wellbeing seminar, Building a Wellbeing Culture, Embracing Workplace Happiness. My name is Sheila Shoiga and I'm absolutely delighted to be with you here today. This seminar is right up my street. It's also an opportunity to learn a bit more about TUS's Masters in Leadership and Workplace Health and Wellbeing course, which we'll hear about a little bit later and over the course of the day. And now to officially open today's seminar, please put your hands together for TUS's President, Professor Vincent Kinane.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Technological University of Shannon, I would like to welcome you all to today's seminar. I'm sure you're looking forward to an engaging and meaningful day. I certainly am. I'd also like to thank the Department of Sport and Early Childhood here in TUS, led by June O'Byrne Pryor, and all those who have supported the creation of this event, including Dr. Trevor Prendergast and the N-Tutor team, Francis O'Connell and the N-Tutor team, who are helping to sponsor this event here today. And for those of you who are unaware of N-Tutor, it's a national program in the transformation, the digitalization and transformation of education in the technological sector in Ireland.
Okay, our first official speaker of the day is the National Policy Lead in Healthy Ireland within the Department of Health. Her areas of responsibility include healthy workplaces, mental health promotion and men's health. She's worked in health promotion for over 25 years at both strategic and operational levels within the HSE. She's a background in nursing and addiction counselling and holds an MA in health promotion and in advanced facilitation skills for promoting health and well-being. Please give a warm welcome to Biddy O'Neill.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me here this morning. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I would really like to congratulate TUS on this initiative and on focusing on the workplace. I think it's a really important part of the whole Healthy Campus. When we started our journey on the workplace, one of the areas we identified initially was about capacity building and the need for staff to be trained in this area. And again, TUS have developed the Masters, which I think we've heard about. And again, that's really innovative and really welcoming. And I have been involved with them in that last year. So it's really positive to see that education part, because people in the workplace who are addressing health and wellbeing need the skills and resources. So we don't put health and safety coordinators in who are not trained. And the whole area of workplace wellbeing requires that recognition as well. So I'm really delighted to be here, and I'm sitting down there and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're doing all the right things. And the day you mentioned for the managers, that's so important, because if I cannot manage my own mental health, or I don't know how to support myself, it's very difficult for me to support my team. So having that kind of innovation and taking that time out is really to be welcomed. So I suppose overarchingly, Healthy Ireland is committed to improving the health and well-being of the whole population. And included in that approach, we take what we call a settings approach. And it's basically supporting people where they work, live and play. So we work with schools, we work with campuses, we work with colleges, we work with clubs, and we work with workplaces. So there's a whole, I suppose, the whole life journey that we transition through all of these areas. And the real concept or goal would be that health and wellbeing is promoted at all those different journeys, and it becomes the norm, I suppose, all the way through those different journeys. And in 2021, we launched the Healthy Campus Framework, and we're delighted to partner with the higher education, with the Department of Higher Education, and then subsequently the Health Education Authority. So they now have a coordinator, which we support, a national coordinator to roll out the Healthy Campus Framework, which is really, really important, and supporting the well-being of students and staff. And again, I'm really pleased to see TUS taking innovation around staff health and well-being, because a lot of the campuses are very focused on student well-being. In addition to this, then the Healthy Workplace Framework, which Dermot has put up here, was launched in 2022. And again, this is a national guidelines, I suppose, to highlight how importance of healthy workplaces. And coming out of COVID, it was very timely, because there was a huge interest in health and well-being. Like 10 years ago, there was nobody talking about workplace well-being, but it has really gathered momentum in that the recognition, I suppose, that staff are your greatest asset, and how you look after your staff and how motivated your staff are has a huge influence on productivity and their well-being. So the two of them together, I suppose, there's a joining up between the two for the campuses. And so there is that mandate. And people often say to me, you know, how important is policy? Well, policy is a mandate for delivery on the ground. In the absence of national policy and it being on a political agenda, it's very difficult to get resources and it's very difficult to drive an area. So the national policy, I suppose, gives us the mandate, and it is a critical piece of the jigsaw. And the framework, I suppose, sets out a roadmap in terms of what's important in the workplace and what is involved in a healthy workplace. There is the organisation. Benson mentioned about the culture, and culture in all our research and in our consultation, culture emerged as one of the key issues. And culture is created by everybody in the workplace, from leadership down to the staff. So it's a really important piece of it. Difficult to measure and difficult to kind of to change, but it is a core element of what motivates people as well as the whole culture thing. And I suppose staff management, everybody has a responsibility for this agenda. It's not down to what the management do. It's everybody collectively, I suppose. How we all treat each other in the workplace influences culture and influences well-being. So it's a really significant piece in that whole jigsaw. In addition, in 2023, one of the first things we did after launching the framework was we launched a website. So there's a really comprehensive website there called Healthy Ireland at Work, and it's basically a one-stop shop for everything you need to know in terms of workplace well-being. So all the tools are there, the steps for how to become a healthy workplace, guidelines to support the different health topics, and it's obviously, you know, website work is obviously always ongoing, and it's something that we are trying to create that everybody can have access to and keep it up to date as well. So it's really, on behalf, I suppose, of Healthy Ireland, I am absolutely delighted to see this initiative, and I really would like to congratulate TUS on taking the step, both in the Masters and leadership, and also on actually taking a focus today on workplace wellbeing. And we look forward to ongoing engagement with you in the future, and I hope you have a great day. Okay.
Okay, we're thrilled to have our next speaker with us today. What can we say about him? Well, he's a statistician, psychotherapist, TED Talk speaker with unique and valuable insights on the very topic that we're exploring today, well-being. Once described as a statistician with a soul because of his unusual combination of hard statistical skills even, and soft people skills. And he draws on scientific evidence to show that everyone benefits when businesses take happiness seriously. He founded Friday Pulse, an innovative tech business based in London, to be the catalyst in the changing world of work for better. He's currently working on his next book, he told me earlier on, and he's just a really nice guy. I'm looking forward to hearing from him. Please put your hands together for the creator of the 5 Ways to Wellbeing, Nick Marks.
Yeah, I'm Nick. I am a statistician, and yeah, I have done a TED Talk. This is me 2020. Obviously a bit younger. Can't really do much about that. A bit slimmer. I could do something about that. Actually, my hair's shorter there. This is my long COVID hair. I don't know, sort of. I live near Stonehenge, so I decided to grow it first, but it hasn't quite gone yet. Then my wife keeps on telling me I maybe should cut it sometimes. And I founded something called the Centre for Wellbeing at the New Economics Foundation, a think tank in London, in 2001. So yeah, that's 23 years ago, geez. And I love the word well-being, and it's a little bit more nebulous than the word happiness. Happiness, we kind of understand more exactly what we mean. So if I asked you, how is your well-being? This group might know, but most people would go, what do you quite mean by that? And they start hesitating about how they think about it. And so when I come to measuring, I particularly like using the word happiness because it resonates with us. We all understand whether we're happy or not. That is something very deeply within us as a human being. So as a statistician, I'm going to get more robust measurement when I start asking about happiness than I would about well-being. I would say the same about engagement. Engagement ultimately is a kind of made-up management word. And in its worst, it's like just a code word for productivity. And it's the, you know, like, how can we get more out of you and pay you the same money? That doesn't mean say most people are cynical like that, but it doesn't land particularly with the employee well. Whereas if you say to them, I want to make a job that you enjoy, that you're happy in, and suddenly you're doing something that's in everyone's self-interest. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my work. And so to give you an illustration about how powerful measurement is for happiness, I want to show you this graph, which is happiness during the pandemic in the UK. So we saw lots and lots of data about numbers of cases, hospitalizations and deaths. But unless you've heard me speak before, which some of you might have done, you probably won't have seen this data, which is about happiness during the pandemic in the UK. And if you could look at that and see that, you can see the huge dip in March 2020, which was a genuinely scary time. Of course, people were less happy. You know, we all, you know, I was in London that week, at the beginning of a week, you know, the tube was full, and by Thursday it was like down so much because people weren't coming into work anymore. I was worried about my 84-year-old mother. I was a bit worried about myself, particularly when Boris Johnson got ill, and I was thinking, God, I'm chubby like him at the same age, you know. So, you know, things like, so it was a genuinely scary time, and people's happiness dropped. And you can see it, you know, rising up through to the summer. In the UK, we had the rather disastrous, by our now Prime Minister, Eat Out to Help Out, and that spread COVID even more, and we came back into lockdowns again. And that is measuring weekly happiness. It's a very, very simple question, which is just in a survey. It's run by YouGov, who for some reason started measuring it in 2019. I don't actually know the history of why they quite chose to measure it then and start measuring it then. But they started to ask it in a survey which they called the Mood of the Nation. And they're surveying a rolling survey of 2,000 people every week. So it's good data, but it's just asking people to tick a box, were you happy last week or not? So it's the crudest measurement you can get, and you get an extraordinary curve like this. And actually, they've continued doing this data. So this is up to earlier this year, and you can see the ups and downs of happiness in the UK. And they're the two. That's the first COVID lockdown, and the second one was the one that we had in January, February, March. So I presume you had the same lockdown, did you? Yeah. Which I found the worst because I don't like winter anyway. And then you can see other things in the data. So you can see Christmas peaks. So little peaks every Christmas. People take time off work, get together with their family, more people are happy. You do actually see a spike in loneliness and fear as also at Christmas, because people are left behind. So it's not everybody, but you see these very big peaks in Christmas, even in the COVID lockdowns. You see end of summer blues. So, you know, at the end of every summer, you know, people in the UK, imagine Ireland too, feel less happy. You can see big events. The one on the left is Russia invading Ukraine. The one on the right is our Queen's death, and also Liz Truss's government. I don't know which one it is. I was more upset about Liz Truss's government personally, but it's in there. And actually, sadness really spiked that week because, you know, whatever we think about the royal family in the UK, she was an extraordinary woman. And I probably brought up everyone owns personal sadness, but at a national level, you have to have these huge events to see any blip at all. And COVID is obviously the biggest event that any of us have ever seen. But just notice how just asking about happiness really, really captures something very significant about it. And that's because it resonates with everybody. So the first thing I would like to say really is that happiness is a signal of what we call a good fit. It is an evolutionary signal that we are in a good environment. You know, when we're in a good environment, we feel good. And happiness is more complex than that. But at a simple level, that's what it's about. You know, I sometimes say that, you know, if you're a happy frog, you stay in your pond. If you're an unhappy frog, you hop to another pond. And actually, unhappiness is a signal to change. Happiness is a signal to carry on. It's measurable. People say, oh, you know, happiness is intangible. Oh, it's fluffy. It's whatever. No, you can measure it. You can measure happiness. I mean, it's a measure. It's not happiness. It's a measure. You know, it's a number. You know, I have to use a number 1 to 5. That doesn't capture the whole richness of human happiness, but you know, it captures absolutely some of it. And it's dynamic. It's going to go up and down. In fact, it would be dysfunctional to be happy all the time, because we need those negative signals in our lives. So it's a dynamic indicator. It's a dynamic experience. And it also changes through the life course. I don't know if any of you have seen this sort of data about the shape of happiness in our lifetime. It was even on QI in the UK last week, right? And basically it shows that in our middle age, and a lot of us in this room look like we're in our middle age, we are our least happy. And this looks like a really horrifying thing. It's like, oh my God, this is the midlife crisis. It's terrible. inescapable. I mean, all I can say is I'm getting old enough that I'm on the rise now, going up there. The jagged lines are actually just different surveys. This is really, it was on a little Radio 4 show about graphs that are really significant. It's promoted particularly by a guy called Andrew Oswald, another one called Danny Blanchflower. This was for the World Economic Forum, this particular piece of research, but they've been banging on about it for ages. And the reality is it's a statistical truth, but it's a really small effect that you only see in big data. So this is data from the UK Labour Force survey, and if you look at it, it's you can see the little U-shaped curve there. Okay, this is the percentage of people that have reasonable levels of well-being. It's actually very crudely measured by a measure called life satisfaction. How satisfied are you with your life on a 0 to 10? This is people who are score 7 or over. But you can see, yeah, there's slight suppression, but basically, it's 76.5% of people instead of 78.5% of people. So don't worry about the midlife crisis of happiness. It is not inevitable. The variation around the mean is much bigger than the mean, the changes in the mean. And only in huge population surveys do you see it. But it gets so much attention. What gets so little attention, in my opinion, is the quality of work and how much bigger an impact it is. So this is a new paper that is in press at the moment by a guy called Professor Francis Green at the UCL London. I met him to interview me in my book in January, and he said, I've written this paper, you might like this. And he's basically looking at the relative effect of different things on our overall well-being in life. So the effect size. Health, I've rebased here to be 100. Health is the biggest impact on our happiness. I mean, if you're feeling unwell, you're not going to feel happy, are you? And if you've got chronic pain, you're living with chronic pain, that's going to suppress your happiness. If you're living with, with other illnesses, it's going to affect you. So that is the biggest. But this is age. Yeah, it's there. This is comparing middle age to other age groups. It's there, but it's a really small effect. This is income. It's a very crude measure of income. It's just saying, are you above the median or below the median? But that's the impact. The income absolutely impacts your happiness. Anyone that says it doesn't isn't true. It's much worse to be on very low income. In fact, if you looked at the bottom 10, 20% of income, then you would see a bigger effect on this compared to the others. So income does matter. And I've left one free here, which is job quality. Job quality in his work is measured by things like autonomy, purpose, and things like that. It is about 3 or 4 times more important than income. It is about 8 times more important than age. It's getting up towards being as important to your health. If you are in a job you hate, it is going to affect your happiness in life. If you are in a job that you love, it's going to affect your happiness in life. It is probably as big a decision as the partner you marry in terms of your happiness. I haven't got data on quality of marriage. I've got data on whether you're married or not. Whether you're married or not is around about is between income and age. But that's just literally, are you in a marriage or a marriage-like relationship? It is including same-sex couples. It is including people who live as a partnership. And it's in between those two, but that says nothing about the quality. But having said that, if I actually put unemployment on this, so whether you have a job or not, it's roughly the same as job quality. So being unemployed is about 3 times more important for your happiness and well-being than simply loss of income alone. When you become unemployed, you lose a structure to your life, you lose a sense of meaning, you lose relationships, all sorts of things. So work really, really matters. And in fact, I've been having a bit of not an argument, but a discussion with my publisher at the moment, my publishing agent, who says, well, Nick, I think you should write a big idea book. It's on happiness across all walks of life. And I said, no, I just want to write it about work. I want it just to be about work because people spend so much time there. Yeah, the 80, 90,000 hours that they do. Actually of our sort of, our commute to work adds on to that actually. So it's probably even more than that. And work is, I kind of think, where the slump is at the moment. I mean, it's actually, if you look at young people in the workplace, I think they are less enthusiastic about work. They're not buying into the vision that I certainly had as a young man, that, oh my God, I need to really do well at work, and then I'm going to buy a house, and then I'm going to do this, do that, And I think house prices, which I presume are pretty bad here in Ireland, are definitely terrible in the UK. I think climate crisis is affecting them and thinking about the future, all sorts of things are. And I think work is really is under a lot of pressure. And we've obviously, COVID has thrown everything up as well. But quality of work really matters. And that's why I chose about 10 years ago, after my TED talk, to think about work rather than just public policy. And I'm very glad it did, because look what happened to public policy in the UK after we stopped doing that. It was you've had a bit of disastrous, and I can only apologise for Brexit. I didn't vote for it. So happiness at work really matters. Okay, so, and I just want you all just to think about time in your working thing when you were really genuinely happy at work. If you're lucky, it's now. But just think about when you were most happy at your work. Yeah. And I imagine that you felt very energized, that you obviously loved what you're doing because you're happy at work. We're using almost the same words for it, that you're perhaps working part of a team to work on a project, something you really believe in, that you feel empowered to do your work, that you like the people you're working with, you feel respected. It's great, isn't it, when you feel happy at work? It really, when you really enjoy your work. Now think about a time when you were unhappy at work. We're all old enough and ugly enough to have had bad experiences. Yeah. And think about a time when you really were not enjoying your work. You were actually motivated, but you were motivated to leave rather than to work. Unhappiness is a signal to change. If we're genuinely really unhappy, we tend to move. Not always, but we tend to move. The much more dangerous place is to be just okay at work, in between them. Okay kind of isn't okay, but okay is not a signal to move. It's also not a signal to do your best work. When you've just been okay at work, it's okay. You go in, you do what's necessary, you go, and, you've maybe not, maybe there's one person you like having a cup of coffee with or whatever. But, okay, it's nothing like being happy at work, is it? But it's also not like being unhappy. Unhappy is genuinely bad. It's one of the reasons why I always use a scale with a middle point in my scales when I'm measuring something. I always use like a 1 to 5 scale with a middle point that says okay, because okay is a soft not okay. And you can get stuck in okay in your lives. We've all probably sometimes got stuck in relationships that are okay that aren't great. We've got stuck in housing that was okay and we haven't moved. Okay, yeah, it's suboptimal. Let's just put it that way. It's not disastrous, but it's not great. And so I like to think about this in terms of how much value an employee adds over their lifetime. And this is my new way. Some of you heard me speak, I've been speaking about this for about 6 months now, about how to capture the business case of why happiness at work matters. So I want you to think about a typical employee, how long they stay with an employer, and how much value they add over that time. If any of you have ever worked in marketing, you might have done something called the lifetime value of a customer. This is a little bit similar. It's the lifetime value of an employee. And the curve is going to go something like this. Before you employ somebody, if you're the employer, you have to invest in the recruitment process. That costs money. When they join, it takes some time to get up to speed, takes them time to bed in. They need training, they need whatever. And so it might be a year before a company's even broken even on a new employee. And then they add value over their lifetime. I'm not even doing anything about whether they get more productive or not. I'm just assuming they get to a job like that. So this is a sort of estimation, put it that way. But in many ways, we can think about this as an average okay employee. This is the sort of thing we do. But if you think about whether they're happy or not, then you get 2 lines that go like this, which is the happy employee is always adding more value at every point on that curve than the okay or the unhappy employee. You'll notice the happy employee is you're going to break even on a happy employee. This means recruitment is really important. Finding good fit. Happiness is a measure of good fit. Finding good fit in your recruitment process is very important. It is worth, in my opinion, investing more in the recruitment process rather than the less, because you're going to get a better employee out of it. Unhappy employee takes longer and is always adding less value than the okay employee. But of course, happiness doesn't only affect productivity, and I'll show you a piece of data later about it, a piece of research later about it. But also it affects tenure, it affects how long we stay. The unhappy person leaves longer than the happy person. And if you look at average tenure in the UK and the US, this is median for over 25-year-olds, under 25-year-olds leave quicker. We all did when we were young. People go, oh, the young leave jobs. Well, I mean, I think we all changed jobs quite a lot. We took temporary jobs, we all did. Everybody's changing jobs a bit more than 30 years ago, but it's not particularly a cohort effect. It's more that the whole population is changing more. The young have always changed jobs more than the elder. So they look like they're changing more than we did, but we're changing more than people 30 years older than us did. So the whole job market has changed in that fact. But tenure, still median tenure is 5 years. It is shorter for hospitality. It is shorter for young people. It is longer for public sector. It's longer for older people. So it varies, but the median is 5 years. So we're just going to take the median. So if we, tenure varies according to happiness. So this is a study I did with 22,000 people globally. And you can see this is actually just called intention to quit. This is in a population survey. We asked people how happy they are. We asked them whether they're likely to leave. And you can see, and this is actually people who said they were very likely to leave in the 6 months. And you can see that the unhappy are much more likely to say they will. I mean, this is in a survey, so you might say, well, that's not actually real people's behavior. This next graph is real behavior from one of our clients, 9,000 people that we were tracking. And the unhappy were about 3 times more likely to leave next quarter than the okay and the happy. Next quarter. Unhappiness is a signal to move, so we saw a big curve on it. This is asking a 5-point scale. So if you look at the lifetime value of employees from this perspective, you can draw a graph which goes that the okay employee adds this much value, calling it roughly in UK pounds. If you take median salary, median everything, average everything, that's about £100,000, very roughly. If you look at the happy employee, they stay 2 years longer and they add 2.2 times more value than simply an okay employee. Okay is not okay. This is actually for most organizations where the benefit of happiness is from. The unhappy employee is adding hardly any value. They left very quickly. But the unhappy employee is a little comic book, isn't it, in a way? And not to say that if unhappiness is not as serious, it is very serious. But in most of my data, I don't have so many people saying they're deeply unhappy. Well, because they've left in lots of ways. So maybe this is real. It's difficult to know precisely. But where the real benefit for most organizations is moving people from okay towards being happy. And that is much more achievable. And it's much more desirable. It's in everybody's self-interest to do that. Ultimately, if you've got a deeply unhappy employee, actually they may be disrupting other people. So so happiness at work is really important to you, and it is really valuable to your organization. There is a huge win-win in happiness at work. Huge win-win, and you can call it well-being at work if you want to as well. There is a huge win-win here. And actually, as I sort of started to say, I actually think this is an underestimate because I'm using individuals here. And so, yes, this is how we do it, but happiness is contagious. People talk about radiators and drains, that some people radiate this positive energy. And of course, it makes you feel good to be in someone's presence who's smiling and warm and is supportive to you. Someone who is a drain, sucking the life out of you. We've all worked with them, unfortunately, and I sometimes think of like Harry Potter, the Dementors, like sucking your soul out of you. And so that really matters. People affected. You will do it in your life. If you feel down, you will seek out a friend who makes you feel better. We naturally seek out situations for that. It's also actually in some studies you see 3 degrees of contagion, which is that my happiness affects you, which affects your friend, which affects your friend. The effects get smaller. There was a large study called the Foundation Heart Study, which showed that. And so happiness moves around. And so in a closed thing like an organization, it's going to move around relatively rapidly. In fact, depressingly, the fastest moving emotion around an organization is anger. Because we feel angry on someone else's behalf very, very quickly. So if someone's treated unfairly, they're going to feel angry, but we feel angry on their behalf if we care about them. So anger actually moves quicker than happiness around the group. But the reason, so happiness, the fact that it's contagious, it's also social, is I think that teams really, really matter at work. Teams, is where it is. That's the engine of growth in an organization. It's also the engine of happiness and well-being. And I think teams are, well, I think great teams are very poorly defined. If I look up, in books like the Successful Teams and so on, people make very long-winded definitions of them. And I think actually we can be very, very simple and say great teams are happy and successful. They are both those things, and I've got two variables there. So I'm going to draw a quadrant. And so you can have low performing teams, you can have high performing teams, and this is where great teams sit. They are happy and high performing. And that's where miserable teams sit, and nobody wants to be in a miserable team. Nobody wants miserable teams. But we've got two empty quadrants here. There's not a perfect correlation between happiness and performance. And this quadrant up here is what every senior leader fears about happiness, which is that if they think about happiness at work, everyone will be slacking. They won't just be, having a good time. They won't be working, and it will be an absolute waste of time. Yeah, that's their fear. They've actually got many more teams down here, the burning out teams that are actually performing well, but they are not happy. They're driving performance, but they're driving people out of the business at the same time. And if I look in my data, if I think I've got it, how many teams are in each of these quadrants? Again, this is a bit difficult because how do you measure team success in a survey? What I did in the survey, because self-rated performance is notoriously bad as an indicator, because who's going to say I'm performing badly at work? They're not going to do it. So I asked a series of questions about the team, whether the team have got well-defined goals, and then I asked them, how successful are you meeting at your goals? And so I used that in order to make some psychological distance between the respondent and the success indicator. It is not a perfect indicator of success, but it's the best I can do, or the best way I've come up with it so far in a cross-sectional survey. But what you can see, and maybe there are too many in the great teams, but you can see the ratios of them. I think the ratios are about right, which is that there are about 3 times as many in the burning out teams as there are in the slacking, and there's many more in the miserable and burning out than there are in the slacking. There are slacking teams. They exist. They are something to be aware of. They're not the major problem, and they're not a problem with happiness, by the way. They're a problem with business focus. So even if you want to move people from that quadrant, you still want to think about happiness, because you don't want to shove them straight down into the burning out teams. And why don't you? Because this is staff turnover in each of those quadrants, and you can see that staff turnover is obviously worse in the miserable teams, but in the burning out teams, it's 3 times more than in the great teams. And staff turnover is a killer for lots of businesses, not necessarily public sector, but lots of businesses, staff turnover is a killer. And it costs them much more than they realize. They don't join up the dots about how much staff turnover costs them, but it does. It costs them a lot. And they might have very successful recruitment arms in their business, so they think they're doing a really great job. But if the bad managers weren't, they're driving people to distraction, driving out of business. I'll come back to managers. I don't mean to blame managers. I think they're very under-supported. But if the system is not supporting people to be good leaders, not supporting good teams, then you're going to have a real problem in that, and you're going to have a lot of cost in the business. So building great teams is a win-win. In fact, you could say it's a win-win-win almost, and this is really the purpose of my work, is to help people move into this top quadrant. How do you get teams to move up into that quadrant? And so I've created a model. I call it the dynamic model of team happiness, because it's a very dynamic space, and I've got happy teams in the middle. And I also, when I do my measurement, I like to group it into groups rather than look at individuals, particularly when I'm feeding back to organizations. So teams at the middle of it. And as a statistician, I like to think about outcomes and drivers separately. So I like to think about what are the drivers of happy teams and what are the outcomes of happy teams. So in this way, happy teams I think of as both an outcome, it's an outcome, of the drivers of happy teams, but it's also a driver of business success. And so, and this is a very dynamic space. So you can see I put the main flow from left to right, drivers leading to happy teams, leading to successes. But there is a route that goes the other way. So successes lead to happiness. So just thinking of my next slide. Oh yeah, I know what's in, I know what's saying. I'll come back to that thing. So the successes will build the happiness. So if you know, like we get a sense of happiness from our accomplishments at work. So that's going to build it. But actually in the data I look at, the pathway from happiness to successful outcomes is twice as strong as the pathway from successful outcomes back to happiness. So they both exist. So you've got a great virtuous cycle that you can unlock there, but it's twice as strong that way. So the arrows are bigger that way. Now, just to give you an indication about why I like to have drivers and outcomes separately, is that you can answer good empirical questions with it. So think about who is more unhappy, an employee who is stressed or an employee who's bored. Who thinks it's stressed? Employee who's going to be least happy. Who thinks it's bored? Oh, more of you. An empirical question. You'll be pleased to know you're going to be right. But you can create variables. So stress, and you could sometimes in the tech world I talk about this as friction at work. You know, what's getting in your way. You can think about interest. You can think about that as flow. Interest is the opposite of boredom. And then we can look at the relationship between these. We can look at this in linear regressions. Actually, this is just a simple linear regression. If you're doing something more complicated, you can do structural equation modeling or something. But basically, the beta value from stress to happiness at work is 0.14. What does the beta value mean? Well, if you've got a 5-point scale, it means that a 1-point change in stress will cause, on average, a 0.14 change in happiness. So it's an effect, but you can see it's not a very big effect. Whereas interest stress is a 0.61 effectively. So it's about 4 times more important for happiness than stress. That doesn't mean stress is unimportant. You can see it's a negative effect, and stress can definitely affect us. It's a part of burnout. And often stress is about, so if it's a long-term burning out stress, that's very different. But if it's a short-term stress, it's like, the normal stresses that, there's things that we can do about that for ourselves. So this is a tip for dealing with short-term stress. And you're thinking, what on earth has he got a picture of 2 people smoking there? Well, and I think smokers, obviously, long-term health risk, carcinogens, but they do something very amazing about dealing with short-term stress. Many of you would have been smokers. Some of you may still be, or you may vape. But what smokers can teach us about dealing with stress is to think about what they do when they get stressed. It's the first thing, they stop what they are doing. Yeah. The second thing they do is they move their bodies. Really good way of starting to deal with stress. The third thing to do is they go, outside. Notice how I'm building up letters here. So they go outside, which a bit shame they decided to pollute that with smoke, but going outside, seeing the sky is really, really good for our short-term and our long-term well-being. Now you're thinking, how does he get a K into this? Yeah, okay. Well, they kickstart conversations with other people. So they kickstart conversations with other people. And I used to be, when I was a student, I was never a smoker. It was a disgust thing for me. I just didn't like it. But I used to be jealous that smokers would just start conversations really easily. I mean, guys would go up to girls and just say, "Have you got a light?" It's like such a simple way to open up a conversation. And what do I say? Do you want some crisps? I mean, it just didn't really work, did it? So they kickstart conversations, and that's very, very good for our happiness and well-being. And then they do something that I really think they're unaware of with smoking, which is they exhale for longer than they inhale. If you see someone really enjoying a cigarette, they look in slight bliss, don't they? And maybe you've experienced that bliss when you've been smoking, but it's in and it's out. And we know that mindful breathing is breathing out for longer than you breathe in. You breathe in and then you breathe out longer. And that relaxes us. Why does it relax us? Well, it's a deep evolutionary signal that we are safe. If you've been running away from a predator, and then you get to your cave and you stop, then your breathing pattern all changes, and you can take the breaths, you can recover the oxygen. So it tells the brain that you are you're safe if you do mindful breathing, and it is an extraordinary way of de-stressing yourself, you know. And of course, you can do it without smoking a cigarette, and they relax, and that spells smoker. So next time you get short-term stress, think what a smoker would do. And I'm saying this, you know, I mean, this is actually really good to do on an hourly basis, you know, getting up, you know, they say sitting is the new smoking. Well, you know, it's not quite as bad as smoking. Smoking is still really bad. Smoke more than 15 cigarettes a day. Yeah, it's the top suppression of life expectancy. Equal, by the way, with loneliness. Loneliness is coming through in all the data as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. As bad. Loneliness is really, really bad. And I just think we actually have a society which is pretty bad at dealing with loneliness. And we should think a lot more about loneliness in society. But that's a slight aside. But this is your advice is, and of course you don't have to smoke. You can go and float paper airplanes or something like that. And in fact, you should not smoke. But of course, that's your choice, unless you're in the UK and under 15, in which case it won't be your choice because it's going to be banned forever, which is an interesting policy thing, which I probably approve of. Anyway, so you don't need to smoke, but it's a good way of dealing with stress. So going back to the dynamic model, we've got the drivers, we've got the outcomes, and I talk about there being 5 ways to happy teams and there being 7 successes of them. I'm obviously going for alliterations here, but the 5 ways, so some of you may know me from my work 15 years ago on the 5 ways to well-being, which were very widely adopted in public health settings. Was one of the greatest pleasures of my career designing those. It was a tiny project for the Government Office of Science. It was literally a £9,000 project to do some messaging, and they absolutely flew, and they still resonate today. And I know all sorts of tricks behind the design. They were quite deliberately designed to be so that anybody could use them, and that they could be and they were sort of almost point to what universal things you could do. And so when I got into the work, I've obviously picked up that same trick and placed it here. So let's look at them. So when I talk about the drivers, I talk about them being Connect, which shares it with the original 5 ways, but we're talking about a system, we're talking about teams. So there's fairness. We need to think about how people are treated, whether they're treated fairly, whether they're empowered, whether they're challenged, and whether they're inspired. And you can think about those as psychological constructs. So those of you that have done psychology, you think about Connect as relatedness, it's relationships. We know relationships are really, really important for our well-being. As I just said, the absence of them, loneliness, is really bad. Justice is really important in a system, you know, and if you get into it deeply, it's not just justice of outcomes, it's justice of process. Actually, it matters hugely. Autonomy would be what you call empower. Challenge you might call development. Competence might be. Inspire is sort of meaning. Why do I use the other words? It's just kind of easier to use, to think about. A team leader can think, oh, how do I empower somebody? How do I inspire them? Rather than thinking about how do I make their work more meaningful. It's also the reason why I prefer happiness than well-being. It's more the language that people use, trying to put it into simple things that people can do. So, if a client comes to us and they want to define their values, I say, well, look at these. Are your values meeting these at least? You might have other values on top of that. It might be around whatever it is, sustainability or whatever. But do include, if you want to think about the well-being and happiness of your employees, you've got to cover this sort of space. And you can see lots of theories in there. You can see Maslow in there, if you like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, though even he took down the hierarchy at the end of his career. You can see, if any of you know self-determination theory, which is relatedness, autonomy and competence, that's there. Daniel Pink, if you're into drive, it's the last 3. If you like PERMA, which is a model by Martin Seligman. You can see it there, though. I am a critic of PERMA. He has mixed means and ends there. He has mixed outcomes and processes. Positive emotions are effectively the outcome. They're not a part of the process. So PERMA mixes, and so for me fails as a model because it's not distinguished between drivers and outcomes. While I'm there, Gallup Q12, if any of you use that, Gallup talks about engagement. That's just drivers. It's got no outcome measure. So you have to take Gallup's word that these 12 questions lead to engagement because you've got no separate indicator of engagement. In my data, I can look at the relationship between all these and happiness, and I can see it changes from organization to sector to sector. The correlation coefficients are going to be different. They're going to be different drivers in different circumstances. And you can only identify those differences if you have a separate measure of drivers and outcomes. You need the two things. So measuring the drivers of happiness at work, I'm a measurement guy, so designed a questionnaire. So I have 3 questions on each, very pragmatic here. 3 is the shortest scale that you can have to measure one construct in psychology. Think of a 3-item scale. Psychologists love to have really long scales because they think it creates more internal robustness. It does statistically, but it also creates fatigue in the answers. So you actually get less quality answers as the questionnaire gets longer and longer. Businesses are hugely pressured. Everybody wants short questionnaires. Okay, so this for me is the shortest questionnaire on identifying drivers of happiness at work. So, don't know why my look more beautiful when I lost its but don't worry. Anyways, 3 things. And you can basically see that these 15 questions are fleshing out each of those. And if you want to see this questionnaire, you can go to a website called friday1.com and you can take a free happiness test for yourself. And because my models, I try and get them to resonate at an individual, a team, and an organizational level, it makes perfect sense for an individual to do this and get feedback on how happy they are at work now. And I think of my indicators in this way as a bit like a mirror. They're showing you where you are. And you need to know where you start. Everywhere, you need to know where you start. So you can do that and see that. But then what are the outcomes of making happy teams? Well, happy teams, I mean, some of you will be team leaders. Some of you have had experience of leading teams. It's blooming miserable leading an unhappy team. I mean, that is no fun at all. So leading a happy team is great for a team leader. And I talk about happy teams, they are stable. They haven't got conflict going on all the time. They haven't got people leaving. There's a stability in them. That's fantastic. They are energetic. If you're burning out, you've got no energy. If you're not feeling happy, you haven't got energy. They are collaborative. We collaborate better with people that we like, the people we get on with, the people who respect us. They're more creative. They're more attractive. I don't mean they're better looking, though maybe they are, but they attract things towards them. They're going to attract support. IT is going to support you more if they like you. HR is going to support you more. We're natural human beings. We obviously do things. You're going to attract customers to you, clients, suppliers, if you're a good functional team. You're more effective, you're productive, whatever it is, or higher customer satisfaction, whatever your measure wants to be. And ultimately, you're more profitable. You're adding value like that first graph. And that's going to lead to happiness as well. So the 7 successes, lots of data on this, but let's just run through it quickly. Unhappy teams have 3.5 times higher staff turnover. Unhappy people are 3 times more likely to feel burnt out, take at least twice as many sick day leaves. They're more collaborative. They're twice as likely to collaborate with other teams in the organization. They're more creative. They're 4 more times likely to find creative solutions. A really big one. That when you're in a positive mood, you see the bigger picture more, you see how things fit together more. You can imagine things. If you're unhappy, you're closed, you're narrow, you're in your internal world. When you're positive, you can reach out, you can see things better. For creativity and innovation, it's a massive effect. They're more attractive. I mean, this is a fairly crude indicator, but it's basically employee net promoter score. How much would you recommend this organization, someone else to work with, but they will be your brand ambassadors for you. Effective is they're over 20% more productive, and profitable is that actually businesses that have good cultures have got at least 3% extra share price growth. You can think of those in business outcomes, if you want to, lower staff turnover, less sickness absence, more integration in the business, more innovation, more talent attraction, more productivity, more share price growth. These are goodies. Everything is working together. There is an alignment between my personal happiness, between my team's functionality, and between the organization. So actually to shareholders, and you can even make a case it's good for society, because obviously people who are happy at work are less sick, less strains on the health services, and all sorts of other things. I want to show you my favorite piece of research. So I'm going to go into one bit of research in a bit more detail. So this has been emerging as a piece of research for a long time. They started it over 7 years ago. It is led by Professor John Emmanuel Denise from Oxford University. And it is, for me, a brilliantly designed study. It's taken them a long time to publish because they're trying to nail down the elusive golden vision. I don't know, I haven't got the right word, but the holy grail, that's the word I want, of happiness research, which is to prove causality, to prove it, because so many things are indicative of it and they're not actually proof. So what they did was they studied 1,700 BT, British Telecom, call operators. These are people in basically the modern sweatshop, which is, a call center. There's absolutely no teamwork in this, so that's interesting. But it actually becomes great from a statistical perspective because you don't have to worry about the reverberation around a group because these people are just dealing with a call on the phone. They measured happiness and sales weekly, so they've got a pretty good measure of their mood. You're not asking them daily, which might be even better, but weekly is really good. So they also had a spread across the UK. So that's going to become important in a minute. So they had a spread of call centers across the UK. 90% of the calls were inbound. So there's no prospecting. There's no salespeople going out and reaching people. Even the 10% outbound are normally callbacks. So you've got people aren't using their initiative to find the customer in any way at all, which of course a salesperson normally does, and therefore going to have a bigger effect. And happiness is measured weekly. So they did it on a scale like this, which is very similar to one I use. Overall, well, how happy were you this week? They're using the emojis. I tend to put happy at work this week, but they were just asking them how happy they were. I don't think I've got the data here. No, but all I can say is they're a pretty miserable lot in this stuff. Because when I looked at the data, I was like, really, that many people unhappy in a week? In my data, I get, 20% of people unhappy. They had like 45% of people who were unhappy every week. So it's pretty miserable. Okay, but it's a low pay job. It's not a great job in any way. They looked at the difference in sales by happiness level. And basically they found a 13% difference in sales. That is a relatively small effect in the research. But think about it, it's just their tone of voice on the call and it's having this effect. This is really tightly defined. And they could also see that was between operators. That was saying comparing the happy to the unhappy. This is within the same operator. They were tracking them for 30 weeks, so they could see weeks when they were happy and weeks when they weren't. And they basically showed that the weeks that they were happier, this individual was selling more. Right. So if an individual changes, that is still not a proof of causality, by the way. And the reason is that, if they became happier, they sold more. But, we don't know if happiness is driving sales or sales is driving happiness because it's within the same week. So, and they rather brilliantly, they looked at the British weather. And so you have a lot of variability. Maybe you have less variability than us, actually, because, we've got from Truro to Glasgow or whatever. But the sun shines 30% more in Cornwall than it does in Scotland. On average year. Of course, it can change every day, but it changed every day. So what they were looking for was, does the sunshine make people happier, and does that lead to more sales? With British, I guess it's the same with you in Ireland. We talk about the weather obsessively. It affects us a lot. If you're in India, you wouldn't get this effect because it's sunny every day, and they hate it. That should when it gets too hot, but this causal pathway, if they can show evidence this is a causal pathway, and of course they did, and they basically showed that when it was sunnier, people became happier, and they sold more. You can't go the other way around with that. However happy I am, I can't make the sunshine. And however much I want to be a druid and pray from sun, whatever, it doesn't work. Okay. And so basically that's a proof, but actually there is just one other possibility, which is that the sun could be making the customers happier and they could be buying more. But because there's a spread over the whole country, customers were routed sort of randomly to any one. So they could look at the weather where the customer was. Well, actually, no, they didn't look. They looked at the weather generally in the UK that day because they actually didn't know the geographical location of the customer. And they looked at the specific weather on that day. And basically, it was the local weather that was driving the results, not the national weather. And that is the first peer-reviewed paper ever accepted for publication on the causal link between happiness and productivity in sales. And they deserve a lot of credit for that paper. However, it's still not telling us why they're selling more. It's still just observing that when you're happier, you're selling more. So what actually is psychologically going on there? And they have this slightly more speculative part of the paper, which I think is just as genius. I think John Emmanuel Deneve and George Ward, who are two of the lead, are absolutely excellent wellbeing researchers out there. But they looked at why. And to do this, they looked at the types of call that people were taking. And they had categories of calls. So they had simple order taking. They had more complicated contracts. And then they had recontracting, which is basically unhappy customers ringing up with something that's a problem. And notice the increasing complexity of those calls. So, and what they found was that there was absolutely no impact of happiness on the routine calls. None at all. You're ringing in, can I order this? Can I, have this internet connection? Can I have this? Thank you very much, blah, 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 pay, boom. No impact of the mood. Positivity helps us deal with complexity. It helps when things are simple, doesn't matter so much. When things get complex, how you feel matters more and more. The more complex a role, the more creative a role, the more you need to sort of go off script, which is what I say here, which is that, positive operators could go off script. Literally, they weren't following a script. They suddenly had to get into the moment. They were able to see the customer's point of view. Very important step in empathy is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. It's called mentalizing in psychology. We start learning as a toddler that someone else has a different point of view. It's a skill we keep developing right up into our 20s as we mature. We see more and more maturation go on and people to mentalize. They can de-escalate situations. When we are angry ourselves, we escalate a situation. We all know this with our partners. If one of us gets angry, if the other one does too, it goes pretty nuclear pretty quickly. What does with my wife anyway. But if we can, one of us can stay calm, well, it can de-escalate quite quickly, yeah. And so so they can de-escalate situations and they can problem solve with them. Effectively, they get into their point of view. They can solve the customer's problem. Like you might not have customers, whatever. But we have to work with other people and see them from their point of view. And ultimately, they find a solution. In this case, it's make a sale. But all of those are applicable to nearly every job you can think of that you need to do. Positivity is helping us deal with complexity. The world is complex. It is fast moving. And we need to, the more that we feel good, the more we can roll with that, the more we can make the best of it. And if you look at these 7 successes, it's particularly picking up the collaborative, even though it's not teamwork, but they're collaborating with the customer. They're being creative, they're problem solving with it, and effectively they're being more effective, being more effective. Yeah, that's my favorite research. And I think it really, really shows why happiness is really, really important. It gets into the nitty gritty of it, as well as showing the causality. So the next question and my final point, is that how do you build happy teams? And firstly, what not to do, ping pong and pizza. Really, I mean, you can do that if you want. It's fun. I like ping pong. I like pizza. Parties also don't. This is one of our clients having a party. Lasts a week. Everyone enjoys a party. Actually, this is a really good client. You can see they're in the green all the time. But, parties are not going to do it. So, the boss that wants to have a party at Christmas and thinks that's dealing with team happiness, they're not. They're just, making a blip. Individual interventions have very little impact. This is rather distressing for lots of wellbeing programs, but basically a big survey, 28,000 people, showed, again, it's by John Emmanuel Deneve's group. It's by a guy called William Fleming. Basically, this is a slightly complex graph, but it's showing all of the programs they did. This, if it had a 0 on the Z score, that would mean it had no impact. I'm going to show you something which looks like this. The X is marking the mean. The whispers are marking the standard deviation. You need all of the whispers to one side or the other side of the graph to have a statistically significant result. And you look at that, and they're basically none of them really making an impact, except this one, which is volunteering, which is like getting out of the organization and doing something else. So that's not really helpful to workplace well-being, but it does have a positive effect on people's happiness and well-being. Look at that one up there. Resilience training has a negative impact on people's well-being. it's sort of me. I think it's slightly disrespectful to like stress the hell out of people and say, we'll make you resilient and then you'll be okay. We'll give you a training on it. Yeah, we'll stress you, give you a training. So basically, I think people find it disrespectful. And there's lots. I don't mean to bash Martin Seligman too much, or maybe a bit, but the Penn Resilience Program has failed with in the US Army, invested $500 million in it. The soldier mental fitness, it hasn't worked in any way, has not tipped any indicators such as veteran suicide or anything. And they've invested a lot in it. And as soon as they made it voluntary, none of the soldiers would go. So what does that mean? It means that interventions need to be social and systematic, and intervention should be too, which is what I'm saying here. That's the aim. To get this, what qualities does the leadership need to build a great team? Team leaders really, really matter. This is a study by Google. Google had a plan that they were going to basically show managers were not needed, and they found exactly the opposite. So they created a project in 2008 when they were still growing. They were less than 1,000 people, and they found 10 key attributes of a senior leader, and they were a good coach, empowers the team, creates an inclusive environment. All of these things, right? I'm going to highlight these ones. These are all soft people skills, all soft people skills. So the most important skills for a team leader are the so-called soft. Let's not call them soft. Let's call them essential. These are the essential skills of a team leader. Coach is most important, empowering, creating inclusive environment, good communicator, supports career development, collaborate. There are some technical ones there, but even in Google, the technical ones are low. Even in Google, the technical ones are low. So why are people promoted for technical skills? Why are they promoted for length of service? If you want to put people in management roles, people skills are the most essential. Find other career paths. Let your technical people earn masses more money if they're delivering value to them, and let them sit on their own or whatever it is, or work in a team. But if you've got great technical people, don't lose them. They're worth a lot to you. Just don't get them to manage other people, because you'll destroy the other people. What are the biggest blocks? Lack of training, and I haven't got the time. Time pressure is massively important for people. So it needs to be simple, systematic, social, and simple. So the first step is understanding how teams feel and what their challenges are. And so I would suggest that you use the 5 ways. Use a survey like this to identify what is going on. That mirror, you need to look in the mirror. You need to see how you are as a team, as an organization. I call the process measure, meet, repeat. Start with the measurements, meet, make decisions, repeat it. Because life changes very, very quickly. And complete this 5-minute questionnaire, review the results, identify areas for improvement, repeat the process, making the positive changes, going round that cycle. You can think of it as an action learning cycle. You can think of it as well, I'll do an action learning cycle, but basically, you're going around and doing stuff again. It's a feedback loop. You're bringing in the information. Instant reporting, overviews. Okay, but just to give a plug to what we do, we've got a special offer coming, which is that the first measure is free. So the process we define is measure, meet, repeat. We can't do the meet for you, but we can do the first measure for you absolutely free. You can decide it, and then if you want to repeat, obviously we want you to become a client. But if you want to do that, you can do that in an organization up to 500 people for free. It's coming in June, that offer. But if you want to know when it gets released, you can link with me on LinkedIn. Please link with me on LinkedIn anyway. And sign up to our newsletter, which is at the bottom of our page on our website. Being even more systematic is you can get into people's weekly work. And we have a tool which is about a weekly happiness. So you get a weekly measure of that happiness that's always going up and down. So it just works like this. How happy were you at work this week? And you see time trends instead of like this. You see them looking like this for your organization, for your team. What's going on in them? What are the setbacks? How are they recovering? You then meet as a team, and that's the bit that our clients most struggle with sometimes, is that then they struggle to get a weekly team meeting going. So we try and make it as easy as possible for them, which is we create a slide deck of all their results in a week. So a team leader should always know how their team is doing. A good team leader would do this absolutely naturally, but celebrate, build on the positives, tackle any of the negatives in a week. So it's friction and flow, like the interest and stress I showed you. Those are the 2 most important drivers for weekly happiness. Is can you progress your work? Are you not stuck on anything? Then the culture comes into the whole part of it. So that's a measure, meet, repeat. So just to summarize, happiness is a sign of good fits. It's measurable, it's dynamic, it's important to you, it's valuable to your organization, it is contagious, it is critical for building great teams. And the dynamic model has the 5 ways to happiness, the 7 successes, separates out outcome drivers from outcomes. You can do the free happiness test at friday1.com. Ultimately, someone said it in your Masters of Leadership and Workplace Wellbeing. Is that what it's called? Videos, your 2 talks. She said, what gets measured gets managed. First measure free, measure rate, repeat. Friday Post Hub. Thank you very much indeed. Follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
We're going to hear from our 3 award-winning case studies right now. So first up, over the past 3 years, our next speaker has led the health and well-being agenda in Iarnród Éireann, focusing on engaging staff across the organisation and ensuring workplace well-being activities are led by staff needs. In 2023, Iarnród Éireann were acknowledged for their work, receiving the CIPD Healthy Ireland Award, embedding a culture of health and well-being for large organisations. Prior to joining Iarnród Éireann, our first speaker this part of the afternoon worked with the National Transport Authority, the National Cancer Society, Sydney University and New South Wales Health and the Irish Health Foundation. So she's had an incredible career so far. She's worked in a broad range of settings, including community, government, university, workplace and the health sector, both here in Ireland and in Australia. Please give a warm welcome to the Health and Wellbeing Programme Manager at Irish Rail, Sharon Daly.
Thank you so much for the invitation to speak here today. We have been on a journey in Irish Rail, and sometimes I say that I'm like, oh God, everything's a journey because we're on the train and we're always on the train, and these things come out of our mouths. So I'm clearly embedded in the organisation at this point. I joined Irish Rail just over 3 years ago as the first dedicated person working in health and wellbeing, and it's been fantastic. I work alongside a fantastic team. So Anne Farrell is, some of you may know, so Anne has worked with a CIE group for lots of years. She probably wouldn't like me to add them up for her, but she has been there working away before the rest of the world was talking about health promotion and health and wellbeing. Massive role working with over 10,000 colleagues across the CIE group. And then more recently, my colleague Jennifer Finlay Mulligan joined us around a year ago, and she's brought a huge amount to the role and has been a brilliant supporter. We have a new team member being recruited. We're sifting our way through a very big pile of CVs, but we're delighted with all of the interest in the role. So we expect to have a new team member soon. But I suppose just importantly to say around our team, we work across the organisation. We have a wonderful network of health and wellbeing champions who we couldn't do our work without. They're absolutely fantastic. We've around 50 champions spread from a huge variety of roles across the organisation. And we have a medical team through our occupational health department. We steering groups, we have huge support from our leadership and our chief executive. So that's our team. I suppose just to give a little bit of background about I suppose our piece and the reason that we were awarded through CIPD was around embedding a culture of health and wellbeing within the organisation. So looking strategically, we have a couple of strategic drivers that bring the focus on health and wellbeing. The biggest one being our people strategy, but it ties in with across the other different development areas as well. So obviously the really important piece around people is, you know, talk about people, but they need to be healthy and well to be able to perform in their roles. And thankfully, our organisation and organisations globally and in Ireland are really understanding that piece now. And I think, you know, all the negatives with COVID, but it really accelerated that for health and wellbeing, that, you know, we need to bring our full selves to work. You can't leave things, you know, outside the door. I was at actually the menopause summit last year in was it BV or somewhere, and one thing somebody said was, I wish I could leave my body at home. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You can't do that. So, you know, we have to ensure that we are supporting people across the different pillar areas. So the health and wellbeing of our staff is paramount, and this is embedded within our people strategy. I think having that within structures and strategies really helps for the sustainability of the health and wellbeing programme. I'm not going to go into this into much detail, but just, I suppose, presuming most people know Irish Rail, we operate trains around the country. You might have been on one to get here. We have a huge workforce. It's actually even more. It's probably getting close to 5,000 people now. We've had huge recruitment over the last while, huge development, huge investment, and huge future growth, which is a really exciting time. It's bringing a lot of change and opportunity and diversity across the organisation, which is fantastic, and a real opportunity, you know, for health and well-being, because there's real energy around it as well. So we have lots of challenges. We have huge opportunities, but we have lots of challenges given the nature of our work. So we have a traditional culture. We have a 90% profile of men, 46, but actually probably going to 47, nearly 48 at this stage, because everybody's getting older. Fortunately, we all are. I suppose this is a huge piece for us to really acknowledge and look to see how we can support people. We have every type of cohort really of staff. We've office staff, we have, you know, frontline staff, we've our night workers, shift workers. We have a huge cohort of people spread all over the country, urban and rural. So the low turnover can be a challenge as well. Access to healthy choices. So obviously, if you're working nights, it's quite difficult what's available, what's open, and then that culture of healthy food. So, we've had some really positive stories through some of our health and wellbeing champions about being on their own journey of health. And one guy shared with me there about 18 months ago how he signed up as a health and wellbeing champion because he was on his own health journey, and he started bringing in his own lunch. I think he might have had some health indicators and been advised by his GP to make some lifestyle changes. So he did, but he got an awful hard time from the lads in the workshop, giving him, you're not coming down for breakfast roll, and the culture that was there. But fast forward 18 months later, and there's been huge change within that department. I was sharing with some of the other speakers and some colleagues here today that we're actually hosting our annual health and wellbeing conference within their workshop, because these guys have embraced health and well-being so much, and they're living it, and they're so supportive of each other. When they come in at 7 o'clock in the morning, they sit down, have a cup of tea and check in with each other, and then a couple of them even go out and do a bit of yoga on the grass, which I'm like, no yoga teacher required. They did it off their own volition, which is amazing. So, this culture piece, that embedding and supporting people where they're at is so important, but it's that planting seeds and enabling and supporting people along the way. We work to this framework. So this is the World Health Organization framework, and this is our foundation in the organization. So it looks at the physical work environment, personal health resources, the community involvement, and the psychosocial work involvement. And the key piece is the middle. So this is our leadership engagement and our worker involvement. And for me, since I've joined the company, my first line is, what do you need? I'm not here to tell you what you need, and we listen and we work with staff. And that would be my main piece of advice to anybody who's looking for any bit of advice, would be to go with what people need, because it's not about telling people to eat more apples. Most people know that they should eat a bit of fruit and veg, but actually it's about understanding what are the challenges and what do people really need, what's going on for them. So we've had staff surveys, the champions feed in, we're out listening to people, we meet night workers, shift workers, the work across the board, and we're constantly listening and then actioning. And that's the really big thing, is constantly going, you ask for this and this is what we're doing, you ask for that and this is what we're doing. So really, really important. And then leadership engagement. One thing we're really, really lucky at in Irish Rail, and probably why we've been able to make some progress, is we've huge buy-in from our leadership team. Our chief executive is hugely supportive. He started in Irish Rail as an apprentice, and he's worked through loads of different areas of the business. So he sees the importance of people, and he's been in different departments and functions, and he's seen how people and people's well-being can be impacted. So he's a huge advocate, and he never said that, which is amazing. So long may that last. That's hugely important. So this, I suppose, just covering the key kind of areas. So as I said, this is our CEO, Jim Mead, and he launched our family carers program. So one of the things that came up for us back about 2 years ago was that we have a really large cohort of our staff who are caring for loved ones with additional needs. So we linked in with Family Carers Ireland. We have a program there to support them, and we're constantly looking to see what we can do more. And actually, Jim, coming along that day, speaking and meeting, and they brought some family members along with them, some of our colleagues, to the launch, and he met them and listened, and he shared his own experience of being involved in the care of his mum, which is really important because he understands and he gets it. And I think having that support means that if somebody needs a bit of flexibility, being comfortable with asking for a bit of support, because sometimes people feel, I don't want to let the team down. I mean, the simple things like people sharing experiences that they've had a great manager who's let them go out to work 15 minutes late so they can be involved in whatever the care situation is they need to. and the positivity you get back, and you talk about happiness, all that stuff feeds into happiness, because if it's something that's important to you to be able to do that task, to to do your piece for the person in your life you care about, you're going to feel better, feel looking in the door. Our stores manager, who is a fantastic supporter, so he's leading on our conference next week that I mentioned. We managed to get our chief executive on a smoothie bike, actually. That was just after COVID, so everybody was excited to be out doing mad things in the real world again. In terms of worker involvement, we have huge support, as I said, from our health and wellbeing champions. We're surveying, we're watching analytics on our internal platforms. We're constantly out talking to people and understanding what the challenges are for people as well. I'm not going to go into this one too much detail, but just acknowledge through the pillars. So one of them is around the physical work environment. And I suppose understanding that the physical work environment does have an impact. And I think this is something that's an education piece around some of our leadership and managers. Is it's not just the downstream individual focused activities, that we need to be doing. We need to be looking at the structure and making sure that the environment is supporting people to be as healthy and well as they can be and they want to be themselves. So the environment is really, really important. The personal health resources. So again, if people don't know how to cook, or they don't know, don't have the skills to look after their health, or they don't know what foods are healthy, for example, then how can they make those choices? So we've lots of different supports there for people. So knowing their numbers is really important. So we've had a lot of people identify with high blood pressure, and then knowing that they can take the actions if that's something that they are willing to do at that particular point in time. But it's again having that knowledge. So again, these are some of the pieces that people have asked for, and that we have some actions that we have taken. We have looked in lots of different areas. The general lifestyle pieces there you can see, and others around our EAP awareness. We worked with outdoor workers. So we've quite a few guys coming forward and saying we're quite concerned about our ears and our neck. We're out on site quite a lot. So we've a new UV hat for them, really trendy, matching with our high-vis here, height of fashion recommended for Saturday night, but really, really important. But that came from staff wanting it, and obviously you'll have early adopters and that, but again, really important to see that. Or supporting the conversation around menopause. It still is amazing to me that we're going out to different locations around the country, a lot of time with a lot of men, and they want to talk about this, and they want to bring booklets home, and they promise me they're going to read them on the way home so that they're informed as well. But it's amazing how the world is changing, and people are really open to dialogue as well. And more recently, our management team have committed that any women going through extreme menopause symptoms can be referred to our health team to a medical specialist and be funded by the organisation. So again, a really nice piece, but again, from listening to people in terms of needs. So we've covered lots of different areas of work to date. We have stopped linked in with the HSE. If anybody hasn't done this already, the HSE have an amazing free service that's available, and it is to support people stopping smoking. So it's one-to-one. They can come in, do group sessions. They can do it on the phone. There's free nicotine replacement therapy provided. It's amazing. We've had a 90% success rate with these programs. They come in and do like 6-week workshops, and the feedback's been amazing. It's been fantastic. The family carers program, loads and loads of different things going on here. Our night worker program is something I'm really excited about at the moment. Night work is really challenging, and people have high rates of chronic disease, or higher risks of chronic disease when they do night work and shift work. So we have a program going on at the moment with night work. So we're going out to the porta cabins at night before the guys take possession of the tracks and go and do the various jobs that they're doing. And we're covering the kind of key pillars around, mental well-being, nutrition, sorry, I've totally gone back, but all the key pillar areas, activity and sleep as well, and hydration. And we bring them loads of food to taste as well, which is really exciting. I've got lots of conversation going. So that's really interesting. Our critical incident piece, again, that's a hugely important one, and something that maybe people might not be aware of, but unfortunately, we do have situations where there are suicides on the tracks, and that obviously can have an impact on both our drivers and other staff who are involved at the scene post-incident. So we have a huge piece of work going on at the moment around that to see how we can best support staff. There's obviously lots of measures in place, but looking to engage and discuss with staff so we can make that even better, to try and mitigate that risk and that for people. Positive mental health. So I saw the Hello, How Are You campaign been advertised outside. So that's a campaign that we're really, really passionate about in Irish Rail. So during May, the Hello, How Are You team from Mental Health Ireland will be out at some of our stations, highlighting that connecting piece. And the connecting piece is something that, you know, we really focus on. It's a huge piece. And we will be then, our champions will be running coffee mornings across their various locations to support the campaign and connect, because since COVID, you know, those opportunities for connection and coming together for a cup of tea have kind of been a little bit lost. We have to, you know, reforge them again. And we're kicking off our conference next week in Inchicore with the launch of the Hello, Are You campaign for staff, and we've a burst event coming up over. So we've our Niche and Go health and wellbeing program. So this is talking about lifestyle piece. So lots of things going on with this. These are just some of the findings. Sorry, this slide is kind of so much text. But the highlights are that people are really finding it really impactful, engaging with group coaching sessions, one-to-one coaching. We've lots of different events that people engage with. There is an app and stuff as well. But it's that personalized approach. People come together and get to know others that are going on the journey. And the provider is a hugely you know, passionate, supportive advocate of people's health. But I think the piece that's so important, and again, it's not about, you know, thinking about diet about a restrictive way. It's about, you know, nourishing your body, and that's the breaking point, is really nourishing your body. And, you know, as people say, they have more energy and they're less sickness because they're nourishing their body. They're not trying to deny their body calories. It's just that idea of nourishing, and, you know, what things can you add into your diet to make it, well, focus on vegetables. Which is fantastic. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. The psychosocial work environment quadrant, again, our people are amazing. We have amazing people, and I'm looking around the room because I know one or two of my colleagues have said they might pop down, so I can't see you. But anyway, they might be here, and I'm not spotting them. But we have amazing people. Kelly is one of our health and wellbeing champions, as is Tom, and this is some of the feedback that they've given us over the last little while. And it's amazing, like the first line there from Tom, and Tom is a quiet guy, and I'd asked him, how did you get on this year? What do you feel you achieved as a health and wellbeing champion in your area? And he said to me, I feel like I've opened a few very closed minds. And that's amazing, amazing, amazing. If everybody could say that, that's what they did over the course of a year. He drives a train, that's not his job, but he has opened a few very closed minds. I mean, it's a fantastic thing, and that's about the culture of happiness, supporting people. So it's a really fantastic piece of work that the champions do to support the agenda, because they're bringing their, you know, their nuggets, they're planting seeds, they're opening conversations, and the power is there with them, and we're just facilitating them. So you know, Kelly had mentioned that, you know, she'd gotten involved in the program, and she found it really uplifting. Like one of the guys dropped her some locally made honey, you know, to make sure, I think she did cold community. It's really sweet kindness again, but that sense of community. So hugely important. There's some of our champions, and again, they're across the organisation. So not just office staff, we have night workers, we have engineers, we track maintenance, we have people on board, we have drivers, graduates, accountants, the safety, the works. Our family carers program I've mentioned already. Again, this piece, people feeling seen as carers within the organisation, has been really powerful. It's small changes that people are, you know, tweaks and flexibility. It's all flexibility. I think the world's become a bit more open to that since COVID as well, and that's what it is. And you get it back in spades from people because they're happy and they care and they're passionate about their work. And generally, people care. There's an awful lot of people who are obsessed with trains in Irish Rail, which I didn't realise. It makes sense. But yeah, so it's really, really important to be linking with communities. This is the next quadrant over. I mentioned mental health. Ireland's Hello, How Are You campaign. We get involved and support loads of different other initiatives around the country as well. And I suppose I want to wrap it up, and it will just give you a flavour, a feeling of some of the work and the events that we do. It's a little bit cringy because I tell you some members can't be honest. But the most important thing is watch for our chief executive and what he says, and this is my reason for playing this over and over in his company, because it's really important. So sometimes capturing the footage is gold. Our last year. I just want to welcome everybody, and I hope you really have a fabulous day with us. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers joining us for the event, so I think you're in for a treat. Our aim as an organisation is really to create a workplace environment where health of employees, mentally and physically, is embedded within the culture and work practices of our organisation. This is a fantastic opportunity you're getting in terms of the investment in your well-being by the company, and I think using it to the best of your ability to be able to make sure that your story is a long one and a healthy one, I think would be absolutely amazing. Still lots of things to do when we're on a journey, as everything is a journey. But I think it's really important that we acknowledge where we've gotten to, and most importantly, all of the people, including all of yourselves here in the room today, who have engaged in their own health and well-being and supported the health and well-being of their colleagues.
Money well spent, in my book. Always has been and always will be. And we will continue to support it, and we continue to support health and well-being, because I do believe it's much better for our company as a whole.
Have that support and open support, and every opportunity with every group. I'm like, did you hear what he said? No, he's not here today, but you know, he believes in this, and you know, our colleagues believe in it, our champions do. I am really, as I said, lucky to work with a fantastic group of people. I love my job. I'm very happy every day. I think about that this morning, so thank you. But thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'm happy to chat to people later on at any point. And that's it.
Okay, our next speaker works within the Human Resources Department for Clare County Council. Her career spans over 28 years, having worked in the banking, educational and local governmental sectors. She's currently leading the recruitment and selection unit in Clare County Council and has oversight of the health and wellbeing initiatives provided for staff, working closely with the learning and development unit in this regard. She was instrumental in securing the 2023 and 2024 CIPD Healthy Ireland Award for enabling a culture of workplace wellbeing and embracing new ways of working for small to medium organisations. And Clare County Council is the only local authority to have secured this CIPD recognition. So it's an incredible achievement. Please put your hands together for the HR lead for recruitment at Clare County Council, Patricia McNamara.
This is our county here. It's a rural-based county. I suppose Ennis is our biggest town. Our chief executive there is Mr. Pat Dowling, and this is the way the organisation is broken down. We have 6 directors, and I suppose following on from that, 6 directorates. So we cover a huge range of activities across the council. Within finance and support services, there's finance, ICT and human resources. Economic development covers planning, the local enterprise office, town and estuary strategies, property management and our Ennis Municipal District. Our social development covers housing, Ukrainian and international support, which is new, and also included there is defective concrete blocks, which is now an issue for us in County Clare. Sports and recreation craft activities, and the North Clare Municipal District, which covers out around the area of Ennistimon. Our physical development department directorate covers roads and transport infrastructure, environmental services, our fire crews and emergency services, our water services, and they're transitioning now to Uisce Éireann. So we have staff moving from the council to Uisce Éireann, and Shannon Municipal District also comes in under the physical development department. Rural then covers rural development, local development, the culture and the arts, all our library services, our corporate services, communications, and Killaloe Municipal District. And then our tourism department, tourism is covers capital development, Shannon Heritage, DigiClare and our West Clare Municipal District. So we cover a vast amount of actually climate change. We have a section on that thrown in somewhere there. I just forgot it, but we cover huge and varied. So we have staff across all of the areas, indoor staff, outdoor staff. So like Irish Rail, indoor staff and outdoor staff, and it's across all of the county. I work in HR and we have 5 distinct areas there, but I suppose we have 989 employees, and that goes up then in terms of we have lifeguards for the summer, beach operatives. So we have all of a coastal county, so we have all of that included.
We have 6 directorates, 4 municipal districts, 5 area offices, and 28 councillors, which are our elected members. So we're having local elections now soon, which brings a lot of fun to, to the county. Within HR, then I suppose the 5 areas are workforce planning and recruitment, and we're always trying to plan ahead and get new things are coming on stream for us all of the time. Recruitment is ongoing. A lot of people don't leave, but actually there's opportunities now for people to get promotion and stuff. So recruitment is ongoing in the council. Staff wellbeing and welfare is an area we're very proud of. We have a welfare officer on board with us for the last 18 years who has done Trojan work, and it's introduced at induction and it continues on until retirement. And people really value this within Clare County Council. We offer, I suppose, all of the services that Sharon was talking about earlier. And people really value that, the welfare aspect of it. If people get into difficulty, we have benevolent funds, we have all sorts of different initiatives for staff, and they really appreciate the wellbeing side of things. Learning and development is another area. We have a huge scope within that and a lot of training, and people can go on and do all sorts of learning and development activities. We have industrial relations when things go wrong, as they sometimes do. And then we have pension and payroll services, which, you know, keeps track of, make sure everybody's paid, and then people's pension in the public service that is transferred from one organisation to the other. And then CORE is our system that we use to keep track of everybody's details and all their personal and financial details so they get paid. Our guiding strategies then, I suppose, we have corporate plan and the management objectives, and they'll be renewed again this year. Following on from them, in our 6 directorates, there's directorate plans. Within that then we have team development plans, and from those team plans, everybody has a personal development plan. So you can see it follows all the way through up and down the system. Everybody's connected to contribute to the corporate and management objectives. We have an innovation team, so hopefully, Nick, all of our creative people are on that, contributing to new ideas. And we're guided by, I suppose, our local and national digital strategies. And we have a new Clare digital strategy, which is launched in 2023, and that's for 5 years. I suppose what we did to get new ways of working, as I said, we're a rural setting with the service provision in every part of the county. And trying to get people working on the go. The need was accelerated by the pandemic, and all of the activities I'm going to talk about are all brand new. Everything was new for us in the last 4 years, a huge change for a local authority. And we always have to background to improve health, our safety and well-being of staff. That's always key to us. And then our digital strategies guided those too. And what we did then, I suppose, I worked across all areas of HR, and we were early adopters, I suppose, of a lot of the technologies and things that I'm going to talk about, and led on many of these initiatives. And I suppose the impact was then across the whole organisation. People could see what we were sending out because it involved all the staff. We had new ICT developments and upgrades, I suppose, with the pandemic, and we always brought and trained, bring training on board for all staff in these initiatives. These are some of the stuff that we did. So we introduced Microsoft Forms. So we reviewed everything in HR and automated everything where we could, absolutely everything. So people weren't filling out sheets of paper. We were getting stuff back electronically. We used DocuSign then for contracts and our interview boards. So we had electronic signatures coming back. We saved an awful lot of paper as well. We introduced online staff engagement. We automated our personal development, our personal performance management development system. I reduced the pages from about 20 pages down to 2 where people had to fill out, and then automated where they submitted their training request back. We introduced e-recruitment last year, which is really great for us. We introduced single sign-on systems. So if we have like a couple of different packages, there's just one single sign-on. You don't have logins for every single system that we use. We now have flexible remote working patterns and leave entitlements. And this next initiative was really great, our outdoor workers. So we introduced tablets across to outdoor workers and the supervisors, so they could do temporary traffic management systems on the go. GIS systems for mapping trees out around the county, and even walk around checks with their vehicles. So they just input it into the tablet and didn't have to come back filling out paperwork. We offered remote wellbeing training for everybody who was working remotely. We also introduced the right to disconnect policy so that people didn't feel that they had to work 24/7, because sometimes that's the expectation in people's heads. I'll talk to you a little bit further about our blended working policy and what we did to introduce that. We introduced cybersecurity training to make sure that people were safe when they were working from home. Online training, learning and development platform was introduced so people could access everything online. We introduced an online newsletter. All of our wellbeing seminars are recorded, and people could play them back, 24/7 whenever they wanted to. This one here, I Have Your Say platform, was useful for staff and the public, so people could have their say on any consultation processes that we have across the county, but also staff to have their say too. We now have HR analytics, which we can analyze all of our HR data, which is great, and preempt retirements and people's age and the age profile and whatnot. We introduced a new wellbeing hub to augment, I suppose, the wellbeing officer role, and that's available to people 24/7. They can look at all sorts of things on that. We have a digital hub infrastructure across the county. So in every part of Clare, there's a digital hub. We have lone worker devices for people going out when they're working on their own, so that they're safe. Live work updates, so the lads are putting their stuff in on tablets. The work is updated straight away. We have a new CRM system. There's online induction modules for new starters, so every new starter gets a suite of training to do before they start the real work, I suppose. We have time management apps, and then HR have an online help desk that's manned all the time, and we get back to people. So those are some of the initiatives that we introduced. I suppose these changes, the working from home began in 2020. Every administration member was issued with a laptop since the pandemic, replacing PCs. So we now have a docking station, so you can bring your laptop with you everywhere, which is good and bad. We have online training delivered regularly. As I said, our outdoor staff were introduced with tablets, so we're going to roll that out further as we go. Our emergency funding streams, like people applying for restart grants, that was all automated so that the public didn't have to be getting out sheets of paper and application forms. They could apply online. We introduced the online recruitment system, which is great. That's only just been launched, and you can see, we're asking people for their driver's license and whatnot. You can see people uploading them from the dash of their car or their counter at home. So it's interesting the pictures that are coming in, but we're getting what we need, so it's working. We have 12 digital hubs, and this is the personal development plan. They're coming, you get about 700 of them annually as well. The impact of all of this, I suppose, is that 75% of our administration staff now avail of blended working. And that means 400 staff are working from home on a regular basis, which is a complete departure from what we did. We all worked in the office all of the time. So it's a big change. We have a reduction in health and safety instances as a result of online training in terms of slips, trips and falls. So people are doing more training, and it's had an impact in terms of health and safety. Our emergency schemes are delivered online. And the e-recruitment system can be administered by our recruitment team at home as well, which is great, so that we have access to that all the time. The live work updates reduce admin by about 30%. So people, as I said, don't have to come back to the desk typing in information again. Our hubs are in the rural areas. And this next one is with our PDP. We used to have 12 legal arch folders, but now we just have one spreadsheet, and we can get all the training requests in really quickly and do them in real time. How we did all of this was we created close links with IT, and we spent our budget wisely. We had to look and see, well, what was there and how could we use it to its best potential. And so we've explored every single avenue that we had there and exploited it. Our innovation team fields new initiatives, and we project manage new initiatives, taking feedback on board from all of the staff all of the time. Our priorities when we were doing this was HR supported management and staff through all the initiatives, and the support is available all the time. Health and safety and wellbeing was always important to us. The digital strategy guided us. All of the initiatives are evidence-based and outcome-driven. So we collected all of the evidence on what people wanted, and then we got outcomes based on what they were looking for. So people were happy with all of the changes. The efficiencies then, they benefit the public and the staff, which is great. So there's a dual purpose. And the flexibility to work remotely and on the move had a huge impact in terms of work-life balance. And also we can have consistency in emergency services and in times of emergencies. So that's really good. So our blended working, I'll just talk you a little bit through this. So every role was assessed for suitability for blended working, all the nearly 1,000 roles now. Not every role is suitable for blended working, but everybody's entitled to apply for blended working. So we automated all of this. We put in online DSE assessments for everybody. Cybersecurity training was provided. Online application process was introduced. Two-factor authentication and blended working patterns were recorded. So this graph, I suppose, gives you a better idea of what. So I was tasked with introducing the blended working policy for the council. It was a 40-page document and it was very cumbersome. So I put it into this 12-point plan and people could follow. So first of all, people had to read the blended working policy. I'm not sure who did, but they applied anyway. So they had to discuss then their blended working arrangements within their section. So everybody had to apply at the same time. So people knew who was applying to what, and they could assess it as the departments and see who could get it. People apply then through the links. We automated all of this too, and there's a 12-week turnaround in this 12-point plan. So, and actually this is rolled out now quarterly, so it's still in use. So people then got approval or refusal. So if they got refused, people hopped down to point 10, and the grounds for refusal had to be given to the employee, and they could appeal that if they wanted to, and then get a final decision on that. If people were approved, we put them on to do some training to make sure that people were safe when they work from home. They had to do online workstation assessment awareness training, GDPR training, and cybersecurity training. We also asked them to submit workstation self-assessment declarations. So that's just an idea of where they were working at home to see if it was a suitable place. We then did the ergonomics assessment with everybody, so that it was carried out by a competent ergonomics professor to see did we need to make adjustments and all of that. And if we did need to make adjustments, we gave the equipment to the staff. And then finally, the blended working agreement was signed by the line manager and the employee. So that's a formal arrangement in place now. People have to, when they start first, they have to come into the office for 6 months, and then they can apply for blended working. So that's the way it works. This one here on the move, so our everyday inspections and traffic management, people working on the go. We can organise one-off events in terms of weather emergencies and cultural and sporting events. Our on-site home inspections are done now on the tablets out and around. We've remote offices around the county, and our e-recruitment has really been successful. It's helped everybody. This is, I suppose, our employee-centred approach. So we have an NSAI Excellence Through People Gold Award as well, and we're evaluating on that every year. So we're doing another assessment in May. That's on all of our HR services. So we have a HR system and employee wellbeing score of over 89%, which is great. Employee wellbeing always scores really highly. The staff engagement surveys, and this is an example there in the corner of our wellbeing hub. So in January, it gives you a kind of an activity list of what you might like to do in January and walks around the county or what's on. So this is our learning and development platform, and with behind each of these little tabs, there's a suite of programs that people can do training and development on. So you can choose, people have to submit training every year with their personal development plan. So you can choose to lead yourself, lead your team, some wellbeing initiatives. We have continuing education programs so people can do a certificate, a diploma, a degree, a master's, and that's all paid for by Clare County Council. We have continuous professional development as well for our professional grades, like our engineers, our accountants, and what else is in there? Climate action, diversity and inclusion. So all of that's in our learning and development platform. Here's an example of the cybersecurity training that we introduced with the blended working. So this is kind of micro training. People have to do maybe 6 or 8 minutes of this every month so that we're aware of cyber attacks and how not to click on whatever emails come in that you shouldn't. This is an example of the Microsoft form at the back end and including our staff engagement surveys. And this is what we see from our side. And you can see there all the responses that we get in. And it's really useful. This is the e-recruitment, what it looks like. So before, people used to have to download an application, print it off, upload it again. And now people just click on the job vacancies and apply online, which is a huge, huge achievement for us because everything was paper-based before this and it was very cumbersome. The learnings and all of this was we try and need to stay on top of technology and developments, which is difficult, but I think we're on a roll. We'll keep going with what we can. We have to ensure that no one is left behind because of our outdoor workers. We developed the extranet, and when they come in for induction, we put on all of these platforms on their phones so they have access to this. But it's try to make sure that everybody is included in all of these changes. We will continue to support employees and also the right to disconnect, that people don't feel they have to be answering emails at 10 o'clock at night. And we have increased staff consultation, and we always get involved in pilot projects at a national level where we can too, which is helping us along the way. These are 2 of the awards that we've won, one in 2023, which is embedding a culture of workplace wellbeing in the medium and small category. And then this year we won embracing new ways of working, which is great. So this is a little video of embracing new ways of working and working remotely. Just click.
Like many organisations, Clare County Council has had to adapt to a whole new culture of working, whether that's around remote working, where we work from, or flexible working, when we work, and indeed smart working, how we work. And Clare County Council has engaged in this process and have performed very well in doing so.
The ways in which we deliver learning and development has been completely transformed since the pandemic. So we now have a huge variety of courses on offer. Last year, we launched a new platform called Met Compliance, and this is mainly used for delivering health and safety learning and cyber security. Currently, we have about 400 staff that are engaged in blended working. It has really revolutionised people's working lives. So not only are we saving on our carbon footprint, but we're improving the quality of life of our staff members.
ProWorks is an online platform whereby we can select temporary traffic management plans out on site, conduct safe system work plan, site-specific risk assessments. It leads to efficiencies and more effectiveness due to site crews being able to select and deploy temporary traffic management out on the roadworks projects and conduct a site-specific risk assessment at the location. The use of ProWorks ultimately allows a safer working environment for our outdoor staff. Live work status updates also protects the safety of our staff out on the ground.
So here in Clare County Council in the Housing Department, we use the tablets in conjunction with Survey 123 to carry out all our rental inspections throughout the county. This means our team can be carrying them out digitally while on the move throughout the county. I would estimate that our team is now saving about 30% on our inspection times. Now that all the information is live and active, any member of my team can log in and pick up from where our colleagues had left off. This is particularly helpful for staff who are on leave, holidays, or any staff turnovers we have when new staff members starting.
My current role at ICT department is to develop and manage GIS-based mapping solutions. To date, we have developed GIS-based mapping solutions and management dashboards for tree survey inspections, fire home safety check inspections, and RTB inspections.
And Clare County Council has very much embraced this whole new culture, and all of our staff and employees have engaged in this process and have performed very well in doing so.
So this is where we're going to hear from Dermot Malini and Dr. Stacey Cannon Cahill, joint programme leads for the MA in Leadership and Workplace Health and Wellbeing, along with former graduate of the programme, Jennifer Reedy, who's here with us as well. And of course, we're going to open it up to all our speakers as well here today. So I'm going to pass over this mic to Dermot. There. And let's start with the MA in Leadership and Workplace Health and Wellbeing. Talk about how it came about in the first place, Dermot.
Thanks, Sheila. So obviously this is a pre-arranged question because we were afraid the Masters wouldn't get a mention. So just in case you haven't heard about it, we have a Masters in Leadership and Workplace Health and Wellbeing here in Toulouse. So Biddy O'Neill mentioned during her presentation that about a decade ago, nobody was really talking about workplace wellbeing. But we started to dip our toe in that water about, I think it was about 2017. So we initially introduced an online certificate. So it was equivalent of doing, say, a single module in an undergraduate program. So we ran that for a few years, and we started to notice how popular it, how much people were interested in this. So we developed then an online program. In late 2019, we sort of put it all together, and that kicked off in January 2020. And something happened shortly after that. I don't know what it was. Yeah, so obviously COVID came along, and we, March, we were all told go home, and we'll see you in a few weeks. And we all know how that panned out. But it was really fortuitous from our perspective, in the sense that COVID really accelerated interest in making workplaces happier, nicer, better places to be, improving culture and all of that. So that really fed into what we were doing as well. And then in October 2021, we introduced the in-person program. So this runs here in Moylish, and you'll see some of our current students walking around. They've got the black t-shirts on. I see one or two knocking around the place. And we've got some of our online students here as well there today. So feel free to say hi to them and ask them any questions you want about the program. So I think Stacey is going to probably speak a little bit about the program itself and how it runs. So I guess I'll shut up now and pass you over to Stacey.
Thanks, Dermot and Sheila. So just a little bit more around the MA in Leadership and Workplace Health and Wellbeing. It can be a mouthful, but just around it, I suppose it's running for 3 years, and it's ran over 3 semesters, and it starts in October and it runs to August the following year. And there's a good engagement and interest in it. Just even out in the foyer area, people are, I suppose, asking questions around it, which is good. And I suppose the beauty about the MA is that it's run for 2 days over a week, over 2 semesters. And the reason for that is to provide flexibility, work commitments, work-life balance, so that you can pursue a master's, but also, I suppose, manage busy households, work, and things like that. So again, it's providing that flexibility, which is really important. And just, I suppose, to mention some of the modules that we look at. So we look at foundations in workplace wellbeing, and what that's about is it looks at very much the foundations of health promotion, 7-step process, policies, practices, and it really sets the scene, I suppose, for the master's program. And that's a 10-credit module as well, so it carries a lot of weight on that. Another aspect is leadership in workplace wellbeing. Okay, so again, leadership is a key piece when it's driving change in health and wellbeing, and we look at things like leading in change, project management, strategic focus, and communication development as well. So again, we look at different modules that will carry a 5-credit module, and they kind of support the students in that aspect in that workplace as well. And then the final piece, which is probably the hardest piece but the most rewarding, is a dissertation. And what that is, it basically provides students an opportunity to explore maybe a focus in their area or in their workplace, and they can pursue that research with the support of supervision hours and also a research focused methodology as well. And then the last piece, I suppose, I want to focus in on is just around where you can get more information. So again, everyone got a lovely pack when they came here this morning. So if you want to get more information or maybe interested in signing up, there's one for everybody in the audience. So again, have a look in your packs, and if you want to chat to myself and Dermot afterwards, you're more than welcome to do as well.
Great, thanks so much, Stacey. And Jennifer, for you, I mean, you've been through the experience of it, having been a former student of the MA. So what drew you to do it? And then I suppose just share with us how it was for you.
Okay, thanks, Sheila. So my background is actually in social care. So I would have started out delivering training on the front line in social care in relation to compassion fatigue. I graduated here from the social care degree in 2015. So I was delivering training. I was in the space of workplace wellbeing for a few years, but I was delivering one-off training programs in secondary stress and so on. And to be honest, I was going into workplaces delivering one-off days, and it was a bit of a tick the box. What I felt. And, you know, there was one workplace where the manager had said, you know, can we grow this or can we do something? Because she noticed within a few months, she said it was like a slow slip on a banana peel. You know, they all went right back to where they were. And
Right, yeah.
so I ran refreshers and then heard about the masters in health in workplace wellbeing. Heard about the masters, and I thought, you know what, I really want to, I suppose, go deeper into the area of workplace wellbeing myself. And because I've been a trainer in secondary stress for frontline workers, I wanted to expand on that. So the masters allowed me to do both. It allowed me to dig deeper into the principles and practices of workplace wellbeing, and it allowed me to actually research a dissertation on secondary traumatic stress in first responders. So I was now able to expand my training program to between social care workers and first responders, and I now had the masters in workplace wellbeing. So it has really enhanced my my business. It has, I suppose, built my confidence in terms of the work that I deliver, the training that I deliver as well, and has opened up a lot of opportunities. And I think in terms of, in 2022, actually, I started working with BOC Healthcare, and they had said, again, they just asked for, you know, maybe a one-off training day. And then they said, can you come back? Can you measure the well-being within our company? And being honest, I kind of went, thinking, you know, say yes, figure it out later on. But that's what the Masters has taught me to do. It has taught me to, you know, in terms of how to get in there and measure quantitatively, qualitatively, you know, dig into the principles, practices, everything that, you know, has been spoke about here so far. That's what I now do. It's taught me how to write a strategy for workplaces. So I'm doing that now with in both public and private sectors. Something before 2022 I wouldn't have been considering, and I was years doing it. So yeah, so I highly recommend the Masters in Health and Wellbeing. Yeah,
That's
so
wonderful. Yeah, and
yeah.
it's great to get that insight. I think, you know, your own experience of it and how it actually has been such a positive in your own life and in your own work. So thank you so much for sharing. This is the part of the day where we're going to open it up to you guys. I'm sure you've plenty of questions. I also know that a lot of people feel brave, have these questions when the speakers are up here. When it comes to it, and can be a little bit shy. So please don't be shy. Put your hand up if you want to ask something. Great. Work away.
Sorry. This is a question to, as designing the speakers. I was just wondering, in terms of the next year or two, what do you see as being the key areas of focus in the area of workplace wellbeing?
Do you want to direct it to one person? Or who would like to take it then? Nick is there with the mic, sure. You might as well.
I think that the pressure from below is about flexible working. We're seeing flexible working job boards starting to come out. We're seeing a lot of stuff around the 4-day week coming out. A lot of evidence that they call it 100, 80, 100, that you can get 100% of the output for 80% of the hours and you pay them 100%. It's quite dramatic, but I think Parkinson's laws apply. Sometimes work just expands to fit the time. So people are very motivated by leisure, much more extra leisure time than they are by extra money. So I think that the big things are coming around flexibility. AI is obviously changing stuff. I was really impressed with your embracement of technology, actually, and removing frustrations. That's a massive, massive thing. I mean, I probably didn't talk about it enough, but getting rid of daily frustrations is a massive way to promote happiness at work.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay. Yes, go first. I think we'll be able to hear you. It's okay. I think we'll be able to hear you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think having that foundation of structure is really helpful. I suppose I've been working in health and wellbeing when people didn't know what it was, and I'd spend 20 minutes until I met somebody trying to explain what I did. Whereas and I suppose it might have been seen as being a little bit fluffy, or put some bowls of fruit out and it'll be grand. Whereas the structures give that foundation. So I think it's really important, and I make a point of highlighting the models that we're following with any management group that I'm with, because I think we still have a long way to go in educating a lot of management groups and to the real benefit. I think people say, yeah, health's important, but actually tangibly what that means. And some people, you know, understand genuinely and they get it, whereas other people, you know, maybe depend on their own life experience or knowledge base, might not fully get it. So I think the models are, you know, through Healthy Ireland, the World Health Organization, are hugely important. You know, because you can't argue with the fact, you know, particularly I find since COVID, if we're saying the World Health Organization says this, everybody knows who the World Health Organization now are, and it's a really strong foundation, and it makes sense as well. And it's not just that, you know, downstream piece of put the bowl of fruit and you eat your apple there and you'll be grand. You know, it's bringing it back to the structure supporting the individual.
Thanks a million, Sharon. So we do actually need a microphone. My apologies, because otherwise it's not being picked up on the recording. There we go.
It's a question really for Nick, but for everybody, and well done to everybody on all the presentations. They're absolutely excellent. It's on the idea of you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. So the idea, Nick, you mentioned self-determination and the idea of self-determination, and lots of those motivation theories are great. But how did you, you know, for the group and for Nick specifically, how did you find people? Did they become more intrinsically motivated because you facilitated well-being? Like inactivity is referred to as a global pandemic, and it still is, unfortunately. But you guys have done some fantastic work. So I'm kind of interested in what you think about getting people to be intrinsically motivated to engage in the well-being programs that you offer, and have you seen any changes?
Yeah, so intrinsic motivation, people don't know, is the motivation that comes from within. Extrinsic is when, like, you're doing it for rewards, external rewards such as pay or status or things like that. And all of the evidence shows that sustainable change really only comes from intrinsic motivation. I think it's why when Google did the research in the Oxygen project, which I rather flipped through, number one was having a coaching mindset as a leader. And so the leader actually supporting their team or their reports, wherever they are, to work with them. So the personal development plans that you were talking about, I think all of you were talking about that. It's a lot. I mean, all three of the case studies are fascinating for me because you got into the detail. I tend to do the big picture, but that coaching mindset is the most thing, because, you know, if you're sitting down, if you're telling somebody what to do, it's not going to really land much. You know, if you're working with their energy, that's where it is, which of course is harder. It's harder to be a coach than telling somebody what to do, you know, and so you're working, but that's actually where the rewards all are.
Just things change over time as well. We keep plugging away at things. Like we did menopause talks in Carefound County last year, and you see 60 people came and said, "Oh, I have the menopause." If you did that 2 or 3 years before that, no one would have said the menopause existed. So keep plugging away at things, and then sometimes, you know, message is that the seed is sown, I suppose, and people do engage then eventually, and the culture changes eventually. So just keep plugging away at it, and you don't land at some point.
I suppose for me, I really feel that it's, you know, what's important to people. So we are all motivated by different things at different stages in our life. For us trying to understand what that is. So everybody, it will be, you know, it's different for everybody. Like our family carers program is something that's engaged a lot of people in an area that's not roll the fruit, or, you know, the obvious stuff like activity, and that it's hugely important to their well-being and their lives. So trying to and it's more difficult because it's more, you know, labor intensive to understand what's important to people and what they really value and what they need. That would be.
Thank you so much. Okay, another question. Oh, okay. Well, next time we'll come up here because there's a few people up at the side as well. Great.
Sorry.
That's all.
It's a question for Aoife, actually. I suppose we're living in a world that's closer to the Simpsons and the Waltons. So how are we able to communicate with different career stages or different generations within the workplace?
I think our approach is we very much just communicate everything 10 times 10 ways. So we communicate it through every single channel as many times as possible so that everyone picks it up on the channel that they want to pick it up on. We definitely have tried different avenues of communication, particularly with this younger Gen Z generation that we have coming into the workforce now. We tried when we launched our values, bringing in like TikTok style videos, and certainly it actually didn't work. So we've gone back to the more traditional communication, trying to diversify the amount of channels that we use and I suppose repeat the messaging until it lands.
Wonderful. Thanks, Aoife. And it was so impressive listening to all of you speak about the work that you're doing. I mean, I'd say there were a lot of people saying, I wouldn't mind working for those organizations. So well done, guys. You're doing incredible work. So we have somebody here, I think. Okay, next time. It's great to get so many questions, though. Thanks so much. Go for it.
I think it's wonderful that we've had this today, talking about workplace happiness. Like it affects so many other people. It affects the relationships that you have at home with your family, where people feel better about the work that they do. It absolutely permeates into the community and greater society in general. So well done on everyone. Aoife, just a quick question on the fact that I suppose drivers are at the core of the business that you do. Drivers and those that deliver the foods and all that kind of stuff. Have they got access to all the wonderful stuff that you do inside of the organization, like the sabbaticals that are available, the workplace wellbeing programs, the talks and all that kind of stuff?
No, they don't, to be honest. It's just for our full-time employees that have access to those supports. Our drivers can get support to a degree by calling our contact centre. So for example, we have an incident response team based in our Limerick office, and they handle any sensitive issues that come through from drivers or riders. So for example, they deal with end-to-end, physical assault cases, sexual assault cases. So they handle some very serious cases. And then we've built out that wellbeing approach to support them as they support the drivers. But I think the drivers are almost self-employed and they're contractors for Uber, so they're not having access to any of these services.
Yeah, I almost think of I saw a talk from a chocolate company, Tony's Chocolonely, which make the gorgeous chocolates that we all kind of eat. And they spoke about the fact that the supply chain really mattered to them. So the cocoa farmers in East Africa were paid $200 extra. They provide education facilities for those. So that whole supply chain from the chocolate right through to the customer, everybody felt that they were involved in taking care of and cared for. I think that's important when it comes to the world of work that we live in.
Thanks a million for that. Okay, we'll pass the mic over this side here. Lady in pink wants to ask a question.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, I suppose I've been really intrigued around the whole welfare piece and the concern for almost the holistic view of the worker, not just as the producer. And I suppose it was something that Patricia mentioned around the welfare officer that you have in Clare County Council. Now, I have actually met that person through a different avenue before, but I just really like maybe that you might share a little bit about the work of that welfare officer, because I think it's something that I certainly in my organisation would really learn from. So if you wouldn't mind, Patricia, please. Thank you.
Well, if you met her, you will remember her. She's her name is Carol Hands, and her name fits. She's hands-on with everything. She's amazing. And she's been in place she's working for the organisation, I think 20 years. And 16 or 17 of that is in welfare and wellbeing. So the culture is put in place. She deals with anything she deals with. She deals with all of the sick leave, I suppose, any bereavements, any death in service, any problems, health issues, anything any staff member has. Now, it's a lot for her, but she absolutely adores the job. But it's that sense of helping people, and there's structures put in place around her now in terms of learning and development, benevolent funds, retirement, like everything. She's supported, I suppose, by the rest of us now in HR, but that role is crucial. And actually, it's in times of, people, their child might have died, or their husband or wife, or a family member. So somebody dies in service, and we make direct contact with that person's next of kin. And it comes back tenfold that, oh my God, what you did for me. And it might be the most awful circumstances, but it always come back to us in a positive way that we help the staff member. And it's so crucial, and anything awful that goes wrong, we get a call about it directly. And people would answer you in the most awful of times and be so thankful to you. So it does make a big difference. And I think the person who is not stuck in the tragedy either can give a different perspective and talk to people. So she would have done coaching and counselling, and she has counselling herself for her own role, because even Sharon, we were talking about it, you get an awful lot of stuff, other people's problems on your shoulders, but it's invaluable, and it has proved invaluable. And she meets all staff at induction. She goes to the retirement function. She's great.
I think Nick wants to come in there, yeah.
I think it's really important to think about things like this as an investment rather than a cost. And you're investing in a stock of sort of human capital, an individual personal development capital. So the cost there is, holding on, so is looking after things like bereavement. You could look at that as a cost, though. You go cost cutting, or we don't need that. But this is the investment in future flow of benefits for the individual and for the company. And I think it's one of the problems we have with wellbeing programs, that they feel like an upfront cost for future benefits. And it's really, really important. I mean, like when COVID happened, we all existed for 6, 9 months, even a year, on the sort of stock of relationships we had in the organization. And then slowly they start to decay a bit because you haven't seen people. So you're working on that. So there's a real issue with temporal investment and the returns on the benefits, but the returns are massive, as you say, tenfold. I actually would think it probably is tenfold if I looked at it statistically and I could measure that accurately. But it's really, really, and the team leaders, the coaching mindset is the same thing. You're investing for the future benefits of those team relationships.
Thanks so much. Let's go over this side. Does anyone? Yes, this question here. Sorry, now making you run. Thank you so much. You're getting your steps in. There she is with the laptop. Thanks so much.
Live workplace wellbeing, running on the job. Thank you to all. Really, really interesting morning. Nick, you mentioned about Seligman's work with the US Army, where considerable investment was made. It'd be interesting to hear you expand on that, as it was touted as a success. So what the learning could be taken from that, please.
Yeah, the brilliant takedown of it is in Bruce Daisley's book, which is called Fortitude. And so Martin Seligman, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He founded positive psychology. He's done lots of brilliant things, but he got this huge contract with the US Army to build it was called Soldier Mental Fitness Program, and the idea was to build their resilience. And there was a lot of it was using a program which started off in the schools called the Penn's Resilience Program, and basically, like someone was saying earlier, that someone's talked about this, that there's a short-term benefit, and then you don't actually see anything. So yeah. So and so some of these programs, and it's the same with resilience training in organizations and mindfulness and things like that. You can get short-term benefits, but you don't get any long-term ones. And so the US Army spent over $500 million on it, and they didn't improve any indicators after a 6 months, 9 month period. So it was a total waste of money. Which is disappointing. But grit is the same. I think resilience is, to think it's an individual. It's not only individual resilience. It's the support of the networks and the people around you. So to think that you can just individually train someone to be resilient is about creating a structure around them that is supportive, they can learn with, it's supportive and challenging. So I just think the focus on the individual, and I think individually based wellbeing programs, they're not rubbish, but they just don't have the return on investment that you will if you get the sort of more supportive, networked, social ones coming out, so that people naturally support each other. Yeah.
Nick, can I just ask, for somebody who studied happiness in such an extensive way, how has it impacted your own levels of happiness?
I mean, that's the story, isn't it? I mean, like stuck in okay is something, I talk about that, and we've all been in okay sometimes. And I think sometimes you need the nudge to do that. So depends how personally you want to be. I mean, I actually, in 15, 20 years ago, I left a marriage because I actually started looking at marital satisfaction. And when I read the scales, I burst into tears. And, you know, and so actually, I do think if you actually take the work seriously, it can change your life. Now, you know, I needed to leave that marriage and I'm much happier now. So I think work is the same thing. You know, I think just reflecting on it actually helps us change. I mean, I trained as a therapist. Probably many of you trained as counsellors and therapists. I actually didn't work very long as a therapist, about a year. But that's what a therapist does. They show you what they are, they feedback that to you, they ask you some challenging questions. And I think statistics is the same. And I think it's helping people see where they are. So I sometimes talk about a mirror, sometimes talk about being a window. It's a mirror seeing where you are. It's a window to where you can go. And if you offer people a possibility of where they go, many will step forward. Of course, some still need that encouragement. But yeah, I would say it's profoundly influenced my life. And of course, you know, people say research is me research. I'm sure I got into this stuff for my own happiness and well-being as much as anything else. But it's much more fun than just measuring stuff, normal stuff. So I've had a good career.
Wonderful. As Aoife mentioned as well, I suppose having organisations that, you know, where the ethos is about allowing people to be their full expression of who they are. So if you're having a bad day, that you don't have to necessarily hide that, but that actually honouring where you're at is really important, because, you know, toxic positivity is very damaging. We all know that. It's important to focus on what we have and be grateful, but we also need to be real, don't we, about where we're at, and that's a really important message. Okay, more questions from the floor. Okay, I don't know who to go with. Who will we pick? Who do you want to pick? Who do the panel want to pick? There's so many. Let's go here for the moment, and we'll try to get to everyone. We'll try and fly through these. Do you know what? We'll try and do quick fire questions. There's a lot, actually, which is great. So here we go.
Hi, so we've heard from the case studies a lot about how technology can be used to leverage well-being in the workplace. I'm just wondering how you see technology going forward in the future and how it can be used or maybe not used in the, you know, in well-being in the workplace.
So I suppose for us, we are very much blended in how we engage with staff and wellbeing. Given our profile of staff, we do a lot of face-to-face, like we go out, you know, to the prefabs where the night workers are, we go out on platforms, we go out, and that is hugely supportive, and it really works really well in terms of engagement. However, we have over 4,500 people and a gazillion locations and a gazillion more vans and prefab. So to upscale technology is vital. And I suppose it works really well for certain types of initiatives, certain cohorts of staff. So it's very much, I suppose, using it in an appropriate way. I think we still need a human connection, and we've kind of said that that's really key. And I think that will continue to be to the fore, but I think it's the support piece with technology for us anyway in Irish Rail, that it would be there as a kind of the additional piece, or like we're all over the place. If we want to have an event, even like our events next week, it's really difficult because I have so many people who would love to be there, but they have to drive a train because the trains still need to run. So, you know, we live stream to support additional people, we record, we share. So I don't think that's going to change hugely. I think the more we go out and meet people, the more we'll bring people to online for the sustainable piece, because we obviously can't physically be everywhere all the time. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but for us, I think it's probably both, but I think it depends because we have a very different profile to Uber, for example. So in terms of staffing, so I think it's, you know, it depends on the organization.
Thanks a million. Okay, the question.
Thank you so much. It was so great conversation and sharing. My question is to Nick and to everyone that you show great statistics. For example, the relationship between the happiness and productivity, but have you ever checked it in a qualitative way that what's going on in that moment when the people report that I'm happy? Because the feeling is so momentary that what we feel, we're feeling now in people's head or in their what they experience and why they experience happiness.
Brilliant question.
I think of happiness as having different wavelengths, if that makes a sense. You can have some which is very momentary, and you can have some that plays out over very long periods. And in fact, I would almost go as far as to say that But something like meaning is a very long wave of happiness over your whole life, and pleasure is a very, very short wave. And so I think they impact people's work in different ways. So in the moment, positive mood is very important for things like creativity. So lots of studies showing, like, you give people crazy exercises, like you put half the group in a bad mood and half in a good mood with videos or whatever. Like, you guys can have the bad mood, you can have like cats being dissected, and you can have cats playing and having a nice time. And then you set you a task where you give you paper clips and say, how many different uses can you find of a paper clip? And you guys over here will make massively more than you guys over here for that immediate mood effect.
Yeah.
But then you've got the longer term ones about inspiring and feeling like you're doing worthwhile work, which of course are the ones that get you through the difficult moments, because there's difficult times at work and there's difficult times in life. You know, it's why we stay committed to marriages, because we're committed to the meaning and the purpose and bringing up the children and families and stuff like that. So actually for me, it was a huge leap to leave a marriage, because I was so meaningful and committed to it, but actually realizing I was deeply unhappy in it. It creates a tension, and that's where exactly where you get crisis, when you get the crisis between sort of happiness and meaning. Is a big crisis in life when you get into that and rub up against it. And the meaning is what sustains us through the difficult times. So they're both really, really, really important, but they impact differently. So creativity, problem solving, very related to short-term mood, commitment, resilience is probably more related to the meaning and the longer term ones. So I think they just act differently. And that's physiological as well. I mean, the physiological of positive mood in the moment is very, very big. Yeah, but then the meaning is massively. All sorts of data. I mean, you go right back to Viktor Frankl and concentration camps, you know, which is that, you know, having a meaning and a sense of where you're going helps you survive, literally. So they're both very, very important. They can create tension sometimes.
Okay, does somebody have a mic in? Great.
Question for Nick. Just we're doing the postgrad in leadership and health and wellbeing on school here. So great information coming out of it. But just having done some qualitative research on flexible working arrangements, my findings were that people tended to stay because of the arrangements, because we don't have any extra benefits. But I'm wondering then, are people stuck in that stage where they're okay and not moving on because of different stages in life cycle? And has that come up for you throughout I suppose, your learning over time?
There's no long-term data on the effect of COVID so far on like how that's affecting things, because things like career development play out over the longer term. Where there is data is on the telecommuting from the 1980s and 90s, when technology first started to come and some people started working from home. I think the loneliness, one of you in your things about flexible working actually had it really well described, that there are negatives to working from home, and one of them is loneliness. And another one is you're out of sight in the organization, you get forgotten, career development problems. And of course, who chooses flexible working more than working from home? It's women with children. And so actually you're going to get a gender bias that starts playing out. If you're not at all careful about it, that actually they're going to miss the promotion. And you know, clearly women are just as smart as men, just as capable leaders, sometimes better, I would suggest. You know, so that's a real problem. So I think you have to watch out for the biases and the tension between the short and the long term. People say they love working from home. And I think partly when you ask them that in a survey, the word home is a very positive word. It's home, it's where I am. And they actually forget that they like working in the office. And when we started going back to the office, I kept on saying, people, get people back in the office before you ask them whether they want to be back in the office. Let them remember that the fact that they make connections there and whatever. And these blended ways of working, I'm sure, are the best way to go for most people. Some jobs can't be at home. But if you're totally virtual, I think there are going to be medium to long term negatives, not necessarily short term ones. But and I was really very impressed with all of you about the ergonomics that you're actually really doing that. I mean, I haven't thought about that so much, but that is a health and safety thing, and you do it really thoroughly. That's another important thing. People have actually got the right environment, the right internet connection, the right chair, the right security. These are actually the difficult things to solve, aren't they? With big systems. Does that answer your question? Sorry. I think it's short and long-term trade-offs are often difficult to negotiate, and happiness isn't always the best measure. It's quite loaded to the now and away from the future. So you want to use it in regard with other things too. It's not the only measure you need. You don't notice the missed out opportunities, do you? Because
Thank you so much. Jennifer, you want to come in? Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to say, I suppose, in terms of, you know, happiness and how much it's been spoke about, and in the workplaces that I work, I do a lot of one-to-ones, and I'm interested to, from the panel, shouldn't be asking everyone else a question, but just to even open up a conversation around that in workplaces, because I think, you know, it all starts with you. You know, that's something that's huge in terms of the work and the training that I deliver. And in workplaces, when I do one-to-ones with the employees, so I look at micro health, macro health, you know, so the micro being the individual, the macro being the culture. And I think the masters would have, you know, set me up in that sense in terms of Stacey and Dermot's shared health and wellbeing module. You know, we would have done sessions with Stacey around fitness and meditation and mindfulness in very stressful times when there was deadlines, and it was definitely welcome. So that allowed us to, I suppose, put the practical emphasis on it and, you know, look at that element. So while we're talking about principles and practices and strategies, and they're all so relevant, I think the individual and the micro well-being is so important. And for people to be real in the workplace, as you said, because one of the programs that we're running, you know, I was speaking, there was a mother of three in a one-to-one, and she was in tears, and she was, you know, just letting it all go in that session. And it's not a counselling session. We do signpost if people need therapy or counselling, but in the terms of employee welfare, it is important that people have that space for the tougher days and they're not taking it home. And she has said it saved her and her husband's marriage to be able, because she was taking it home. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that the individual.
And that's so healthy to be able to have that sense of comfort, to be able to just say how you're feeling and not have to hide it. Yeah. So we're fast running out of time. And I think we'll give Nick a bit of a break. So if somebody has a question for one of the other panelists, that'd be absolutely wonderful. Okay, Mike, go first. Absolutely.
This is a message, or sorry, question for Aoife. Aoife, we're a small contact centre environment in Limerick, and I'm very interested to know, we would do generally a lot of our engagement activities on core days when people are on site, we'll say, and it certainly has improved our engagement levels in no end. But we've a small number of workers, very small number, that are completely remote around Ireland. And we found it harder, I suppose, to get them more involved in the engagement side of things. And I'm just wondering, out of the activities that Umber have done, either across engagement in general or the wellbeing incentives, which ones have had the highest rate of engagement from the people that aren't office-based on those days, would you say?
I think our approach is very much everything we do in person we'll try and replicate virtually as well. With the exception, obviously, of like a Christmas party or something, we can't do that virtually. Or we did probably try it at some point, but nobody likes that. So we do very much try and replicate everything. I think, to be honest, there's no two ways about it. You get much better engagement in person. We've tried every single thing to increase the engagement with some of our teams who aren't based in Ireland, for example, but there is nothing that beats that in-person quality interaction and engagement that we're seeing. And it's something that we've learned through trial and error. So like similar to yourselves, we do focus a lot on that kind of core day when the most of the teams are in the office, but we will always do every single thing we can online over Zoom or through some sort of a technical platform as well to meet the needs of the team who aren't in the office on that day.
Yeah. And can I just ask very quickly one last thing? Is there any particular online platform that you would utilise for, I think I saw something there for gamification and things like that. Is there one in particular that you usually?
Yeah, so we use Kahoot a lot, which I'm sure everyone is very familiar with, and it's quite fun. There's a platform called Mentimeter. I'm not sure if it's something you're familiar with, but it's fantastic for hybrid environment in particular, because it is a live engagement tool whereby you can vote if you're in the room or you can participate in the room, but similarly, you can do so from your phone at home. So everyone is engaged and involved and has the same experience. And you can use it for polling, you can use it for measuring, you can use it for so many different things, quizzes, fun stuff. So I'd really recommend that one. And it's pretty cost effective and we get huge value out of using that tool.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for all your questions. I'd love to take more, but we have run out of time. So I think at this point, thanks to yourselves for getting involved. Absolutely brilliant. And thank you to the brilliant panel. to Aoife, Patricia, Sharon, Nick, Jennifer, Stacey, and Dermot. Give them another round of applause. Guys, you can take your seats and relax. And to officially bring our Wellbeing Seminar to a close, please put your hands together for the TUS Vice President of International and Dean the Faculty of Business and Humanities even, Donncha McNamara, who's going to officially close our event.
On behalf of our president, to formally thank Bridie O'Neill from Healthy Ireland, Nick Marks from Friday Pulse, from Sharon Daly, from Irish Rail, Patricia McNamara from Clare County Council, and Aoife McCarthy from Uber as our speakers for today. Thank you so much.